Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, they clinked softly against the porcelain, hundreds of tiny prosthetic eyes scattered across the bottom of the tub. Some had pupils scratched out, others were painted with strange symbols on the iris. In the drain, one was lodged deep, and behind it, a thin strip of film with no visible images. Detective Sarah Landry stood in the cramped bathroom of apartment 4B, her reflection multiplied across the sea of glass eyes staring up at her. The apartment belonged to Alina Whitman, age 32, reported missing 17 days ago by her supervisor at Mercy General Hospital, where she had worked as an ophthalmology technician for the past 6 years. Alina lived alone in the modest one-bedroom apartment in Oak Ridge, a small town in western Massachusetts where, as locals would tell you, nothing ever happened. Until now. The neighbor downstairs complained about water leaking through her ceiling, Officer Jenkins explained, standing in the doorway. Building manager came to check and found this. He gestured toward the bathtub, unable to look directly at it. Sarah nodded, then slipped on latex gloves to pick up one of the eyes. It was cool, smooth, medical grade, not a toy. Each one represented a significant cost. Someone had gone to great trouble to obtain these. "Have we located any family yet?" Sarah asked, placing the eye in an evidence bag. "Just a sister in Portland. They weren't close, apparently, haven't spoken in years." Sarah surveyed the rest of the apartment. It was immaculate, almost sterile in its neatness. Books arranged by height on the shelves, no dishes in the sink, bed made with hospital corners. The only personal touches were framed diplomas on the wall and a single photograph on the nightstand, Alina with an older woman, likely her mother. "What do we know about her?" Sarah asked. Quiet, kept to herself. Neighbors say they barely saw her. She worked long hours, often took the night shift at the hospital. No boyfriend, no close friends that we've found. She volunteered at the community garden on weekends sometimes. A life lived small, Sarah thought. Easy to overlook, easy to make disappear. The forensics team arrived, photographing every angle of the bathroom, collecting samples of the water in the tub, dusting for prints. Sarah retreated to the living room, her mind already constructing a timeline. Alina had last been seen leaving work on Friday, April 3rd. Her supervisor reported her missing on Monday when she failed to show up for her shift, something entirely out of character. Now it was April 20th, and they had a bathtub filled with eyes. In the weeks that followed, Sarah immersed herself in Alina's life, or what little there was to know of it. The sister, when contacted, had little to offer beyond childhood memories. Alina had always been different, sensitive, spending hours alone with books about anatomy and science. Their mother's death from ocular melanoma had profoundly affected Alina, steering her toward her career in ophthalmology. The sisters had drifted apart after the funeral. She didn't want to be found, the sister had said during their phone call. Some people just want to be invisible. Sarah wondered if Alina had finally gotten her wish. At the hospital, Alina's colleagues described her as competent, precise, but distant. She rarely joined them for lunch breaks or after-work drinks. The one exception was Dr. Martin Kelly, the head ophthalmologist with whom she occasionally shared coffee in the staff room, discussing cases in hushed, earnest tones. Dr. Kelly, a slender man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, received Sarah in his office with visible discomfort. "I can't imagine what happened to her," he said, turning a pen over and over in his hands. Alina was devoted to her work, meticulous. "I've never had a technician with such attention to detail." "Did she ever mention any problems, any concerns, anyone who might have wanted to harm her?" Dr. Kelly hesitated before answering. "There was one incident about a month ago. A patient was unhappy with his prosthetic fitting. He became aggressive. Alina had to call security, but that sort of thing happens occasionally in medicine. I wouldn't have thought anything of it." "I'll need that patient's name," Sarah said. The patient was Roy Garvey, 42, a construction worker who had lost his right eye in an accident 2 years earlier. His file noted difficulty adjusting and unrealistic expectations. When Sarah tracked him down at his apartment across town, he was belligerent at first, then defensive. "Yeah," I yelled at her, "so what? You try walking around with a piece of plastic in your face that never feels right, makes you look like a freak." "Where were you on April 3rd, Mr. Garvey?" "At my sister's place in Springfield. Birthday party for my nephew. Ask anyone there, they'll tell you." His alibi checked out, but something about his demeanor lingered with Sarah, the way his remaining eye had seemed to evaluate her, calculating something unsaid. The forensics report came back with few answers. No fingerprints in the apartment besides Alina's. The prosthetic eyes were hospital grade, but with no serial numbers or identifying marks. The water in the tub contained traces of preservative solution commonly used for storing ocular prosthetics. The film strip found in the drain was an old-fashioned camera negative, badly water-damaged, with no recoverable images. 3 weeks into the investigation, Sarah received a call from the hospital's administrative office. While clearing out Alina's locker, they had found a notebook hidden beneath the false bottom of a supply box. The notebook contained meticulous records, dates, times, and cryptic observations in Alina's precise handwriting. March 2 MK brought in another one today. 3 makes a pattern, always on Tuesdays, always after hours, no paperwork. March 10 examined the storage unit. 27 unmarked containers. Why remove the identifiers? March 15 MK noticed me watching. Offered explanation about research project, not convinced. March 27 found the invoice. Billing to Artisan Ocular Research. Company doesn't exist in any registry I can find. April 1 must check the cold storage tomorrow. Something isn't right. The symbols matched the ones from the Jensen case. MK can't be involved, but if he is. There were no more entries after April 1st. Sarah's focus shifted immediately to Dr. Martin Kelly, whose initials appeared throughout Alina's notes. A deeper background check revealed nothing suspicious: prestigious medical school, respected research, no criminal record. But a search of medical supply orders showed large quantities of prosthetic eye materials being delivered to the hospital's ophthalmology department, far exceeding their patient needs. When Sarah returned to interview Dr. Kelly again, his office was empty. According to the receptionist, he had taken an unexpected leave of absence 3 days earlier. No forwarding address, no explanation. A search warrant for Dr. Kelly's home revealed a house that appeared hastily abandoned. Closets emptied, computer gone, but the refrigerator still stocked with fresh food. In his basement, behind a false wall that had been carelessly left ajar in his rush to leave, they found a small laboratory. The centerpiece was a work table covered with specialized tools for crafting prosthetic eyes. Shelves lined the walls, holding hundreds of glass vials containing what appeared to be ocular tissues preserved in solution. A corkboard displayed photographs of eyes, some healthy, others diseased, with strange symbols drawn on them in red marker. And there, in a leather-bound journal on the desk, was the truth, or part of it. Dr. Kelly had been experimenting with a new technique for early cancer detection through ocular implants. His methods were unauthorized, his subjects unwitting. Patients who came in for routine prosthetic fittings became his test cases. The symbols were his coding system for different stages of cellular mutation. Aliner had discovered his secret research and confronted him. But what happened next wasn't in the journal. It ended with a single entry on April 3rd. "E knows too much. She thinks what I'm doing is unethical. She doesn't understand the potential. She threatened to go to the board. I can't let everything I've worked for be destroyed. I'll make her understand tonight." 6 months later, Aliner Whitman's case remains officially open but inactive. Dr. Martin Kelly was never found. International alerts were issued, but there have been no confirmed sightings. The hospital conducted an internal investigation, identifying 12 patients who had received Kelly's experimental implants without consent. All were removed and replaced with standard prosthetics. Sarah Landry keeps Aliner's file in her desk drawer. On quiet nights, she sometimes takes it out, rereading the reports, studying the photographs of that strange bathtub scene. She wonders about the eyes. Was it a message, a warning, or the desperate act of a man trying to hide evidence of his unethical experiments? The one question that haunts her most remains unanswered. Where is Aliner Whitman? No body has ever been found. No trace of her beyond that immaculate apartment and the bathtub filled with watchful, unseeing eyes. Sometimes in her dreams, Sarah sees them, hundreds of plastic eyes staring up at her from the porcelain tub. And behind them all, she senses Aliner watching, waiting for someone to see the truth that remains hidden just out of sight. Crime 2, at first it looked like a mistake until they realized the knob actually turned. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a crawlspace packed with blankets and juice boxes. On the plywood floor, someone had scrawled, "She said I could stay if I stayed quiet." The house at 47 Larkspur Lane had stood empty for nearly 8 months before the Brennan family moved in during the crisp autumn of 2017. Windham, Connecticut wasn't known for much beyond its historic downtown and the nearby university, but for Michael and Sarah Brennan, it represented a fresh start. Their daughter Ellie had just turned 12, and after years of cramped apartment living in Boston, the sprawling 1930s colonial with its generous backyard seemed like the perfect place to put down roots. The previous owner, Aliner Mackenzie, had passed away at the age of 94, leaving no immediate relatives. The house had been sold through her estate, and the price had been surprisingly reasonable given the neighborhood. "Sometimes you just get lucky," Michael had told Sarah when they signed the closing papers. The first 3 months passed uneventfully. Ellie enrolled in the local middle school. Michael commuted to his new position at the university, and Sarah worked remotely as a graphic designer from the sunroom they'd converted into her office. The house creaked and settled as old houses do. The radiators clanked during cold nights. The basement had a persistent, musty smell that no amount of dehumidifying seemed to address. It was Sarah who first noticed that something was off. She'd mentioned to Michael that she was finding items in different places than where she'd left them. Her coffee mug would be on a different shelf in the cabinet. The throw blanket on the couch would be folded differently. The level of laundry detergent seemed to decrease faster than it should have. Michael attributed it to stress and the adjustment to a new home. "It's a lot to take in," he told her one evening as they sat at the kitchen table paying bills. "New house, new town, you're probably just forgetting things." Sarah nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She began to keep a journal, documenting the small inconsistencies. Food disappearing from the pantry that neither Michael nor Ellie claimed to have eaten. Doors she was certain she'd closed that were later found open. The shower that seemed damp when no one had used it. Then came the noises. At first they were so subtle that Sarah thought she might be imagining them. A soft shuffling from somewhere in the ceiling above the second floor. The occasional thump that sounded different from the normal settling of the house. Sometimes, late at night, she thought she heard whispering. "Maybe we have mice," Michael suggested when Sarah finally convinced him to listen one evening. They stood in the upstairs hallway, heads tilted back, waiting. "Mice don't whisper," Sarah replied, her voice barely audible. Detective Marcus Holloway had been with the Windham Police Department for 23 years when he received the call about 47 Larkspur Lane. It wasn't the first strange call he'd taken about the old Mackenzie place, but it was the first one since the Brennan family had moved in. The call came in at approximately 2:17 a.m. on February 3, 2018, Holloway would later testify. The caller identified herself as Sarah Brennan. She reported hearing what she described as someone moving around in the attic, and she was concerned because her family didn't use the attic and there shouldn't have been anyone up there. By the time Holloway and his partner arrived at the house, Michael had already investigated. The small access panel to the attic in the hallway ceiling was securely closed, showing no signs of disturbance. The officers searched the house but found nothing unusual. "Sometimes these old houses, they make all kinds of noises," Holloway told the Brennans before leaving. "If you keep hearing things, give us another call." The Brennans installed a security system the following week. The situation escalated 3 weeks later when Ellie reported seeing a shadow move across her bedroom wall late at night. She'd been half asleep, she said, but was certain someone had been in her room. Nothing was missing, and the security system hadn't been triggered. Michael and Sarah began to wonder if the stress of the move was affecting their daughter. They scheduled an appointment with a child psychologist. It was during spring cleaning in early April that Sarah made the discovery that would change everything. She was dusting the crown molding in the master bedroom when she noticed a slight discoloration on the ceiling paint. Standing on a chair for a closer look, she realized it wasn't a discoloration at all, but the faint outline of what appeared to be a small door, about 2 feet square, painted over to match the ceiling. In the center of this outline was something she had somehow never noticed before, a doorknob installed on the ceiling. At first it looked like a mistake, like some bizarre construction error that had never been corrected. But when Sarah reached up and tried the knob, it turned smoothly in her hand. The panel swung downward, revealing a dark opening above. Sarah called Michael immediately. He rushed home from campus, and together they examined the opening. Unlike the main attic access in the hallway, this panel led to what appeared to be a separate, hidden space above their bedroom ceiling. Michael retrieved a flashlight and a stepladder. The beam of light revealed a small crawl space, roughly 8 feet by 6 feet, with a plywood floor. It was packed with blankets, empty juice boxes, granola bar wrappers, and a small battery-powered lamp. And there, scrawled on the plywood in what looked like black marker, were the words that would haunt the investigation for months to come. She said I could stay if I stayed quiet. The police response was immediate this time. Detective Holloway arrived with 3 officers and a crime scene technician. They photographed and cataloged the contents of the hidden room. There were girls' clothes that appeared to be sized for someone around 12-14 years old. A diary with entries dating back nearly 2 years, well before the Brennans had moved in. A collection of small items, hair clips, pens, a bracelet that Ellie identified as having gone missing from her room over the past few months. The investigation revealed that the crawl space had been constructed sometime in the early 2000s, according to building material dating. It wasn't part of the original house plans and had never been disclosed during the sale. The previous owner, Eleanor Mackenzie, had lived alone for decades after her husband passed away in the 1980s. She had no children of her own and had worked as an elementary school teacher until her retirement in 1995. The construction of the hidden room was amateur but effective, the police report stated. Accessible only through the ceiling panel in the master bedroom, the space had been insulated to muffle sound and contained rudimentary accommodations for someone to live there undetected for extended periods. As the investigation deepened, Detective Holloway discovered that Eleanor Mackenzie had been privately investigated twice by Child Protective Services during her teaching career. Both cases had been closed without charges, but former students interviewed described her as intensely involved with certain children, often those from troubled homes. The diary found in the crawlspace belonged to a girl who identified herself only as M. The entries described hiding in the room during the day, emerging at night when Grandma Eleanor was asleep to use the bathroom and get food. The final entry was dated just 3 weeks before Eleanor Mackenzie died. Grandma isn't getting up anymore. I tried to wake her, but she's cold. I don't know what to do. I can't call anyone or they'll find me. Despite an extensive search, no remains were found on the property. The regional missing persons database was checked against the timeline, and 3 possible matches were identified. Young girls who had disappeared from nearby towns between 2014 and 2016. The Brennan family moved out of the house within a week of the discovery. They couldn't bear to stay, knowing someone had been living in their ceiling, watching them, moving around their home while they slept. The case attracted national media attention, with true crime podcasts and documentaries speculating about the identity of M and what had happened to her after Eleanor Mackenzie died. To this day, no one has been able to definitively identify the girl who lived in the ceiling. The house on Larkspur Lane remains empty, its value plummeting after the story broke. Local real estate agents report that even at drastically reduced prices, no one wants to live in the ceiling girl house. Sometimes neighbors say they see a light moving behind the upstairs windows late at night. Police have investigated multiple times but have never found signs of entry. The doorknob on the ceiling remains, a disturbing reminder of secrets hidden in plain sight. And somewhere perhaps a young woman who once wrote, "She said I could stay if I stayed quiet," is still keeping her silence. Detective Holloway still keeps the case file on his desk. There's a girl out there who spent years of her life hiding in a crawl space, he says quietly. Whether she's alive or not, she deserves to have her story told. She deserves her name back. The last page of the diary, which was never released to the public, contains a final, chilling line. "If I leave, I'll need to find another ceiling to hide in. That's the only place where no one ever looks." Crime 3, not a mask, not a decoration. A human face, dried, leathery, stretched across the underside of the couch and stitched in place. The eyes were sewn shut, but the mouth wasn't. Tucked inside, they found a baby tooth and a locket with no photos inside. This discovery would forever change the quiet suburban community of Oak Ridge, Pennsylvania. But to understand the horror that unfolded in the summer of 2019, we need to go back and meet the Caldwell family, whose lives unraveled thread by thread, much like the stitching that held that grotesque trophy in place. Diane Caldwell was 42 years old when she moved to Oak Ridge with her two children, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 12. They had relocated from Pittsburgh following Diane's divorce from Robert Caldwell, an insurance adjuster with a drinking problem and a history of explosive anger issues. Diane was ready for a fresh start. She had secured a job as a nurse at Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital, working the night shift 3 times a week. The schedule allowed her to be present for her children most days, while earning enough to maintain their modest lifestyle. Their split-level home on Maple Street was unremarkable: beige siding, a small front yard, and the kind of porch where neighbors might stop to chat on summer evenings. The family kept to themselves mostly, though Emma quickly made friends at the local high school, while Tyler struggled more with the transition. Tyler was a quiet kid, recalled Mrs. Jenkins, who lived next door, always drawing in that sketchbook of his. Polite enough when spoken to, but you could tell something was weighing on him. I figured it was the divorce. What Mrs. Jenkins didn't know, what no one knew, was that Tyler's sketchbook contained increasingly disturbing images. Faces with their features removed, bodies with parts sewn back on incorrectly, animals with human characteristics. The school counselor had noted concerns but attributed them to trauma from the family disruption. The Caldwells had been in Oak Ridge for 8 months when Diane decided to redecorate their living room. The previous owners had left behind a bulky, outdated sectional sofa that dominated the space. She found a second-hand furniture store 30 minutes away in Westbrook that advertised affordable pieces with free delivery. There, she purchased a dark brown leather couch with brass studs along the armrests. The store owner, a man who introduced himself only as Vincent, assured her it was genuine leather, barely used, and would last for years. Vincent arranged delivery for the following Tuesday, when Diane would be home from her shift. 2 men in an unmarked white van brought the couch. Diane later told police they seemed professional enough, though one had an unusual tattoo on his neck that looked like interconnected circles or chain links. They refused her offer of water or coffee and completed the delivery in less than 15 minutes, leaving without much conversation. The couch became the centerpiece of their living room, and for 3 weeks, life continued normally for the Caldwells. Then, Tyler began complaining about an odd smell. "It smells like the biology lab at school," he told his mother, "like the preserved frogs we dissected." Diane couldn't detect anything unusual, but she sprayed air freshener around the living room to satisfy her son. Emma joked that Tyler was making it up for attention, but the boy insisted, becoming increasingly agitated about spending time in the living room. He began having nightmares, waking up screaming about faces watching him from inside the furniture. On April 14th, Diane came home from her night shift to find Tyler sitting on the floor of the living room, staring intently at the couch. He hadn't slept all night. His sketchbook lay open beside him, filled with drawings of the couch, but with eyes and mouths emerging from the leather. "There's someone in there, Mom," he whispered. "I can hear them breathing." Concerned about her son's mental state, Diane scheduled an appointment with Dr. Lawrence Ritter, a child psychologist in Westbrook. Dr. Ritter prescribed a mild anti-anxiety medication and suggested Tyler might be experiencing stress-induced hallucinations. Meanwhile, Emma began to notice something too. The leather on the bottom edge of the couch seemed to be separating in places, revealing what looked like unusual stitching underneath. When she pointed this out to her mother, Diane dismissed it as poor craftsmanship. 2 days later, Emma's friend Cassidy came over to study. While retrieving a fallen pencil from beneath the couch, she recoiled in horror. "There's something wrong with your couch," she told Emma. "It looks like skin." The girls flipped the couch over, revealing what would become the focal point of the largest criminal investigation in Oak Ridge's history. A human face, meticulously preserved and sewn into the underside of the furniture. The careful stitching followed the contours of what had once been a young woman's features. The eyes were closed, but the mouth was partially open, containing a small child's tooth and an empty locket on a thin gold chain. Detective Marcus Reed of the Oak Ridge Police Department arrived within 20 minutes of Diane's frantic call. With 18 years of experience, Reed had seen his share of disturbing crime scenes, but nothing like this. The level of skill involved was disturbing, Reed would later testify. This wasn't amateur work. Whoever did this had knowledge of preservation techniques and surgical stitching. The couch was carefully removed and transported to the forensics lab in Pittsburgh. The face was determined to belong to a woman between 25 and 35 years old. Dental records eventually identified her as Melissa Chambers, a 27-year-old nurse who had disappeared from Westbrook 3 years earlier. The baby tooth inside the mouth was eventually matched through DNA to her 4-year-old daughter, who had also vanished at the same time. The investigation quickly focused on the second-hand furniture store in Westbrook, but when detectives arrived, they found the building empty. Vincent Harmon, the supposed owner, had vacated the premises overnight, leaving no trace of his inventory or paperwork. The property owner claimed Vincent had paid 6 months' rent in cash and provided minimal personal information. A search through missing persons cases revealed a disturbing pattern. 7 individuals had disappeared from the Tri-County area over the past 5 years. Each disappearance occurred within 2 weeks of a furniture purchase or delivery. Back at the Caldwell home, Tyler's condition deteriorated. He became convinced that other furniture in their house contained human remains. He refused to sit on any upholstered surface and began sleeping on the bare floor. Despite intensive therapy, the boy's trauma persisted. "He keeps saying he knew all along," Diane confided to Detective Reed during a follow-up interview. That he could hear her whispering from inside the couch, that she told him about the others. 3 months into the investigation, police discovered a workshop in an abandoned industrial complex 10 miles outside Westbrook. Inside, they found tools consistent with leather working and taxidermy, chemical preservatives, and most disturbingly, photographs of furniture pieces with what appeared to be human elements incorporated into their design. DNA evidence collected from the workshop matched 3 of the missing persons, including Melissa Chambers. However, Vincent Harmon, if that was even his real name, had vanished completely. Despite a multi-state manhunt, no trace of him could be found. His fingerprints weren't in any database, and the driver's license he had used to rent the property and workshop was discovered to be counterfeit. The delivery men were never identified, though one customer from a neighboring town recalled the man with the chain-link tattoo mentioning something about heading south to Florida for another job opportunity. The Caldwell family couldn't bear to remain in Oak Ridge. 6 months after the discovery, they relocated to Colorado to live near Diane's sister. Tyler required ongoing psychological treatment, and Emma transferred to online schooling after experiencing panic attacks at her new school. The case remains officially open. Detective Reed keeps a photo of the couch in his desk drawer, a reminder of unfinished business. Occasionally, reports emerge from other states: unusual furniture, strange disappearances, individuals matching the vague description of Vincent Harmon or his associates, but solid connections remain elusive. Meanwhile, in countless homes across America, people sit on second-hand couches, sleep on previously owned mattresses, and rest their heads on vintage pillows, never thinking to look too closely at the materials from which their comfort is crafted. And somewhere, perhaps, Vincent continues his work, selecting, preserving, and transforming his victims into functional art that inhabits our most intimate spaces, silent witnesses to our daily lives. The baby tooth and locket recovered from Melissa Chambers' preserved face remain in evidence storage at the Oak Ridge Police Department. The locket, though empty when found, contained microscopic traces of what appeared to be another photograph that had been removed, a photograph that might have revealed the face of the craftsman who continues to elude justice. As for the couch itself, after extensive forensic examination, it was scheduled for destruction. But according to records obtained through a Freedom of Information request, the vehicle transporting it to the incinerator facility was found abandoned along Route 86. The couch was missing. In the silence of night, in homes across America, furniture creaks and settles. Most people dismiss these sounds as the natural noises of inanimate objects, but for those familiar with the Caldwell case, especially for Tyler, who now refuses to enter any room containing upholstered furniture, these sounds carry more sinister possibilities. What might be breathing, watching, waiting inside the places where we rest? Crime 4, no shelves, no food, nothing but one chipped plate resting in the middle of the floor. The dust around it had been disturbed, like it had been recently placed or moved, and on the underside, scratched into the ceramic, "Don't eat until she does." Detective Sarah Mercer stood in the empty pantry of 47 Hawthorne Lane, her flashlight beam fixed on that solitary plate. The Keller family home had been abandoned for 16 days. 16 days since anyone had seen Abigail Keller, the quiet 32-year-old librarian who had lived in this modest colonial house in Millfield, Connecticut for the past 7 years. Abigail had grown up 3 towns over in Westport, the middle child of a high school math teacher and a part-time nurse. Friends described her as thoughtful, almost to a fault, the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthdays but often forgot her own. She'd majored in library science at the University of Connecticut, then taken a position at the Millfield Public Library, where she specialized in archival preservation and ran the children's reading hour every Tuesday afternoon. She never missed a day of work, Mrs. Henderson, the head librarian, had told the police. Not one in 7 years. That's why we called right away when she didn't show up that Thursday morning. It wasn't like Abby at all. The first wellness check had revealed nothing unusual. The house was locked, Abigail's blue Honda Civic was gone, and neighbors reported seeing her leave for work that morning as always, 7:30 a.m., travel mug in hand and PR playing softly from her car radio. But when she hadn't appeared by Friday and still wasn't answering calls or texts, her sister Emily drove down from Boston. Emily had a key. What she found inside her sister's normally immaculate home disturbed her enough to call the police immediately. Everything was exactly in its place, Emily later explained, her voice trembling slightly during her recorded statement. Too perfect, like a museum display of Abby's life rather than her actual home. The bed was made with hospital corners. All her clothes were organized by color in the closet. The refrigerator had been emptied and cleaned. There wasn't a single dirty dish or piece of mail on any surface. It was like she was preparing to leave or for someone else to come in. The only room that didn't match this pattern of meticulous order was the small walk-in pantry off the kitchen. The shelves had been removed from the walls, the food items nowhere to be found, just that single plate in the center of the floor. Detective Mercer squatted down, careful not to disturb the dust pattern around the plate. She'd been a detective for 15 years in Millfield, a town where serious crime was relatively rare. Most of her cases involved property disputes, occasional domestic violence calls, and petty theft. Missing persons were uncommon, and those few cases typically resolved quickly, usually a teenager who'd run away to a friend's house or an elderly person who'd become disoriented. But this case felt different from the beginning. No signs of forced entry, Officer Jensen reported, stepping into the pantry doorway. Neighbors didn't hear anything unusual. Her cell phone is still missing, and we haven't been able to ping it. Either it's turned off or the battery's dead. What about her car? Mercer asked, still studying the plate. Still no sign of it. We've got an alert out to all surrounding states. The investigation had initially proceeded along predictable lines. They checked Abigail's bank accounts, no unusual withdrawals, though her savings had been steadily growing. She lived modestly on her librarian's salary, with minimal debt. Her credit cards hadn't been used since the day before her disappearance, when she'd bought groceries at the local Whole Foods and filled her car with gas at the Shell station on Main Street. Then came the first twist. Security footage from the library parking lot showed Abigail arriving for work that Thursday morning. She parked in her usual spot, gathered her things, and walked toward the staff entrance. But the interior cameras never picked her up. Somehow, between the parking lot and the building's door, a distance of roughly 30 feet, Abigail Keller had vanished. "Have you been able to identify what was scratched into the plate?" Jensen asked, nodding toward the object on the pantry floor. "Don't eat until she does," Mercer read aloud. "What do you make of that?" Jensen shook his head. Could be nothing, could be everything. 3 days later, Abigail's Honda was found parked at a scenic overlook along the Appalachian Trail, about 40 miles north of Millfield. The car was locked, with no signs of struggle. Her purse was still in the passenger footwell, containing her wallet with all credit cards and ID intact. Her phone, however, was not inside. The search expanded to include the surrounding wilderness, with K-9 units and volunteer search parties combing the densely wooded hills. Nothing was found. Then came the second strange discovery. When forensics processed Abigail's home computer, they found she had been researching a local cold case from the 1970s, the disappearance of 18-year-old Catherine Morris, who had vanished while hiking a section of the Appalachian Trail in 1978. Catherine's body had never been found, but a year after her disappearance, hikers had discovered a small camp deep in the woods. Inside a crudely built shelter was a collection of preserved food items and a single plate with the words, "Don't eat until she does," scratched into its surface. "It's not a coincidence," Mercer told her captain. Abigail knew about this case, she was researching it, and now the same signature appears in her house. What followed was a deep dive into the original Morris case. The detective who had handled it, Thomas Lawson, was long retired and living in Florida. When Mercer called him, his voice was frail, but his memory surprisingly sharp. "We never got anywhere with that one," Lawson admitted. "No witnesses, no suspects, just that creepy little camp and the plate. We thought it might be connected to two other disappearances in Vermont around the same time, but we could never prove it. Did you ever identify what "don't eat until she does" might mean? Mercer asked. There was a long pause before Lawson answered. We had theories, none of them good. As the investigation continued, more connections between Abigail and the Morris case emerged. Abigail had been accessing old newspaper archives about the case. She'd checked out books on criminology and cold case investigations. And most tellingly, she'd been exchanging emails with Catherine Morris's younger sister, now in her 60s and living in Arizona. The emails revealed that Abigail had been working on a book about unsolved Connecticut mysteries. The Morris case had particularly captured her interest because, as she wrote in one message, "There's something about the plate that haunts me." 6 weeks into the investigation, Mercer received a call from a hiker who had found something unusual near the area where Abigail's car had been discovered. It was a small clearing, surrounded by dense trees, with a freshly dug fire pit. Next to it, carefully arranged on a flat stone, was a plate containing the remnants of what appeared to be a meal. When forensics analyzed the plate and food residue, they made a chilling discovery. The DNA on the fork found nearby matched Abigail Keller's, but mixed with the food remains were traces of human remains, specifically bone fragments that had been ground to a powder. Later testing would confirm these fragments belonged to a female, approximately 18 years old at time of death, who had died decades earlier. The most disturbing theory began to take shape. Someone connected to Catherine Morris's disappearance had become aware of Abigail's research and had targeted her. Perhaps the original killer was still alive, protecting his secret, or perhaps someone connected to the case feared what Abigail might uncover. 3 months after her disappearance, another plate was found, this time on the doorstep of Emily's Boston apartment. It contained no food, just a handwritten note. "She ate. Now it's your turn." Emily immediately went into protective custody, and the investigation expanded to include federal authorities. But despite increased resources and attention, the case continued to yield more questions than answers. Who had taken Abigail? Was she still alive? What was the significance of the plates and the cryptic messages? And how were these events connected to a decades-old disappearance? The people of Millfield began to lock their doors at night. Parents kept closer watch over their children. Hikers avoided the Appalachian Trail section near town. A community that had once felt safe now lived with a constant undercurrent of fear. 1 year after Abigail's disappearance, Detective Mercer still keeps the case file on her desk. She visits the Keller house periodically, standing in that empty pantry, staring at the outline in the dust where that plate once rested, hoping for the insight that will finally break the case open. The plate itself sits in an evidence locker at the Millfield Police Department. Its message, "Don't eat until she does," a riddle that continues to haunt everyone connected to the case. And somewhere, perhaps watching from a distance, someone knows exactly what those words mean. Abigail Keller is still missing. Crime 5, no one had been up there in years, thick dust, cobwebs, silence, but a trail of bare footprints led from the trapdoor to the farthest corner. They stopped abruptly, facing the wall. Under the floorboards, they found bones arranged in a circle around an old cassette labeled "Practice." The Levitt family had lived in the modest 2-story colonial house on Maple Street in Easton, Connecticut for nearly 40 years. Robert and Linda purchased the home in 1982, shortly after their marriage, believing it would be the perfect place to raise a family. The neighborhood was quiet, made up of similar homes with well-kept yards and friendly neighbors who gathered for block parties in the summer and caroling during the holidays. The couple had 2 children, Michael, born in 1984, and Sarah, who came along 2 years later. By all accounts, they were a typical American family. Robert worked as an accountant at a local firm, and Linda taught 3rd grade at Easton Elementary. The children were involved in sports and after-school activities. Michael played baseball and took piano lessons, while Sarah showed promise as a gymnast. When interviewed later, neighbors would recall the Levitts as private but pleasant. They weren't the type to host elaborate parties or share much about their personal lives, but they always waved hello and participated in community events. No one suspected anything unusual about the family until the winter of 2019, when Robert and Linda, now in their early 70s, decided to downsize and move to a retirement community in Florida. That's when the new owners, the Morgans, Jason, Emily, and their 10-year-old daughter Lily, discovered the footprints in the attic. The Morgans had been living in the house for barely 2 weeks when Lily first mentioned hearing strange sounds coming from above her bedroom ceiling. At first, her parents dismissed it as the natural settling of an older home or perhaps squirrels that had found their way into the eaves. But when the noises persisted, soft thuds and what sounded like shuffling, Jason decided to investigate. The entrance to the attic was a small trapdoor in the hallway ceiling. It hadn't been opened in years, evidenced by the way the pull-down ladder stuck and creaked as Jason tugged it free. A cloud of dust descended as the ladder unfolded, causing him to cough and wave his hand in front of his face. "I'm just going to check for animals," he called down to Emily, who stood at the base of the ladder holding a flashlight. "Probably nothing." Jason climbed the ladder, his head disappearing into the darkness above. Emily heard him fumbling with his phone, turning on its flashlight, then silence. "Jason," she called after several moments, "everything okay up there?" When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, strained. You need to see this." Emily hesitated, then handed the flashlight to Lily with instructions to stay put, and climbed the ladder to join her husband. The attic was exactly as one might expect: low ceiling, exposed beams, and years of accumulated dust and cobwebs. The air was stale and warm. What Emily hadn't expected were the footprints, small, barefoot impressions in the thick dust, leading from the trapdoor entrance across the attic floor to the furthest corner of the space. They appeared to belong to a child or perhaps a small woman. "Those weren't made by an animal," Emily whispered, her eyes following the trail. "No," Jason agreed, "and look, they just stop right at the wall." Indeed, the footprints ended abruptly, as if whoever made them had simply vanished or had been standing there, facing the wall. The strangest part was that there were no returning footprints. Whoever had walked to that corner had never walked back. Jason approached the wall where the footprints ended. It looked ordinary, just wooden panels like the rest of the attic. He pressed against it, half expecting to find a hidden door, but it was solid. "When do you think these were made?" Emily asked, careful not to disturb the prints. "I don't know. The dust is thick everywhere, so it's been a while. But why would someone walk over here and just stand facing the wall?" They called the police that evening. Officer Daniels arrived, a middle-aged man with tired eyes who initially seemed skeptical about being called to investigate footprints in an attic, but after seeing them for himself, his demeanor changed. "You haven't disturbed anything else up here?" he asked, kneeling to examine the prints more closely. No, just walked around them, Jason replied. Officer Daniels nodded, then stood and walked to the corner where the prints ended. He shone his flashlight along the base of the wall, then at the wooden floorboards. Something caught his attention. One of these boards is different, he said, pointing to a section of flooring. See how the grain doesn't match. Upon closer inspection, they could see that a roughly 3-foot section of flooring had a slightly different color and texture than the surrounding boards. Officer Daniels pressed on one end, and to everyone's surprise, the board lifted slightly. I'm going to need to call this in, he said, reaching for his radio. Within hours, the Morgans' new home became a crime scene. Detectives arrived, followed by forensic specialists who carefully removed the loose floorboards. Beneath them was a small cavity containing what appeared to be human remains, bones arranged in a perfect circle around a single object, an old cassette tape labeled simply "Practice." The medical examiner later confirmed that the bones belonged to a young female, approximately 14-16 years of age, who had died sometime in the late 1990s. The cause of death couldn't be immediately determined due to the condition of the remains, but the arrangement of the bones was clearly deliberate, not how a body would naturally decompose. Detective Gloria Martinez was assigned as lead investigator on the case. Her first step was to trace the history of the house and its previous occupants. This led her directly to the Levitt family, who were now living in a retirement community in Sarasota, Florida. We need to find out everything we can about them, she told her partner, Detective Wilson. Especially their children. The bones appear to be from a teenage girl from the late 90s. Their daughter Sarah would have been a teenager then. Records showed that Sarah Levitt had been reported missing in October 1999 when she was 13 years old. According to the original police report, Sarah had left for school one morning and never returned. An extensive search was conducted, but no trace of her was ever found. The case eventually went cold. But why would the parents continue living in the house if they knew their daughter's remains were in the attic? Detective Wilson wondered. Maybe they didn't know, Martinez replied, or maybe they did. Either way, we need to talk to them, and we need to find Michael Levitt. He would have been 15 when his sister disappeared. When detectives visited Robert and Linda Levitt in Florida, the elderly couple appeared genuinely shocked at the news. Linda collapsed into tears while Robert repeatedly shook his head in disbelief. Sarah ran away, he insisted. She left a note. We always thought she'd come back one day or at least contact us when she was older. The detectives exchanged glances. Mr. Levitt, there was never any mention of a note in the police report from 1999, Martinez said. Linda looked up, confusion etched on her tear-stained face. But Michael showed us the note. He found it in her room that afternoon. Michael found it, Martinez asked, carefully keeping her tone neutral. Yes, Robert nodded. He came home from school and went to check on Sarah when we couldn't reach her by phone. He found the note on her bed. And what happened to this note? The Levitts looked at each other. We gave it to the police, Linda said, but her voice wavered with uncertainty. Mrs. Levitt, there's no record of any note being submitted to the police during the investigation of your daughter's disappearance. The tension in the room shifted perceptibly. Robert's hands began to tremble slightly. That's impossible. Michael gave it to the officer himself. I was there. Where is Michael now? Detective Wilson asked. "We haven't spoken to our son in many years," Robert answered after a long pause. He had problems after Sarah disappeared. He blamed himself for not protecting her. He moved out when he was 18 and cut contact with us. Further investigation revealed that Michael Levitt had changed his name to Michael Lerner shortly after leaving home. He had moved frequently over the years, but was currently living in Portland, Oregon, where he worked as a music therapist at a rehabilitation center. When detectives finally located and interviewed him, Michael appeared nervous but cooperative. He was now in his mid-30s, with the same dark hair as his sister, but with eyes that seemed perpetually haunted. "I've been waiting for this day," he said quietly after they explained why they were there. "I always knew someone would find her eventually." "So you knew your sister was in the attic?" Martinez asked. Michael closed his eyes. "Not at first, not for years. I really did think she ran away." "But you showed your parents a note." "I wrote it," he admitted. "I found her diary after she disappeared. She had been planning to run away. I was afraid my parents would blame me if they knew the truth." "And what was the truth, Michael?" His hands were shaking now. "Sarah and I used to play in the attic when we were younger. It was our secret place. Our parents never went up there because of my father's bad knees. We'd bring toys, books, and later, when I started getting interested in music, I'd bring my recorder up there to practice without annoying our parents." He paused, swallowing hard. "That fall, I was obsessed with this idea of recording ambient sounds. I had this theory that you could capture energy, emotions, thoughts on tape. I convinced Sarah to help me with an experiment. We went up to the attic late one night." "What kind of experiment?" Martinez pressed when Michael fell silent. "I wanted to record her breathing, her heartbeat. I had this stupid idea about capturing the sound of life. I had her lie down in a circle I'd drawn, said it would help focus the energy. I was just a kid with weird ideas, but then..." "Then what, Michael?" "She started making fun of me, said my experiments were stupid, that I was weird. We argued. I pushed her. She fell and hit her head on one of the exposed beams, hard. She wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. I tried to revive her, but I panicked. I didn't know what to do." "So you hid her body under the floorboards?" Michael nodded slowly. "I knew that section was loose because we'd used it to hide things before. I arranged her the way we had been setting up the experiment, with the tape recorder in the middle. I don't know why. I wasn't thinking clearly." "And the footprints?" "I made those," he admitted, years later. After I moved out, I would sometimes go back when my parents weren't home, just to be near her, I guess, to apologize. The last time was right before they sold the house. I stood there for a long time, facing the wall where she died. The case against Michael Levitt was built primarily on his confession. The cassette labeled Practice contained nothing but static and what audio experts later identified as the faint sound of a young girl breathing, followed by muffled voices arguing, a thud, and then silence. Michael was charged with manslaughter rather than murder, as prosecutors believed his account that Sarah's death had been accidental. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. The Morgans never moved back into the house on Maple Street. It remained empty for several years, its reputation as the attic house keeping potential buyers away despite significant price reductions. To this day, some locals claim that if you listen carefully on quiet nights, you can hear the faint sound of a teenage girl's laughter coming from the attic. Others insist they've seen fresh footprints in the dust when the house has been vacant, small, barefoot impressions that lead to the corner and stop abruptly. facing the wall. But perhaps the most disturbing detail emerged only after the trial had concluded. When forensic analysts finally managed to enhance and clean up the audio from the cassette tape, they discovered that the recording continued long after the thud and subsequent silence. For nearly 2 hours, the tape captured the sound of labored breathing that gradually weakened until it stopped altogether. Sarah Levitt had still been alive when her brother sealed her beneath the floorboards. Crime 6, wrapped in wax paper, labeled with neat handwriting, 10 human tongues, each preserved in its own bag. Most had bite marks, one was pierced, and one had writing burned into it, "Speak once more." The house had no signs of forced entry, but the bedroom door had been removed from its hinges. In the sleepy town of Millview, Pennsylvania, a place where most residents didn't bother locking their doors at night, Detective Sarah Brandt stood motionless in front of the refrigerator. 23 years on the force hadn't prepared her for this. The soft hum of the appliance was the only sound in the otherwise silent house. Outside, birds chirped in the late September afternoon, oblivious to the horror contained within these walls. The house belonged to Dr. Marcus Whitley, 48, a respected speech pathologist who had lived in Millview for just over a decade. Neighbors described him as quiet but friendly, the kind of person who would wave from his driveway but rarely stop to chat. He kept his colonial-style home impeccably maintained, with neatly trimmed hedges and seasonal decorations that changed like clockwork. Dr. Whitley had grown up in Vermont, the only child of a librarian mother and a father who taught high school biology. Former classmates would later tell investigators that young Marcus had been studious and somewhat reserved, with an intense fascination with communication disorders. He'd graduated at the top of his class from a prestigious program and had built a successful private practice helping children and adults overcome speech impediments. His patients adored him for his patience and his gentle approach to therapy. Every Monday through Thursday, Dr. Whitley would leave his house at precisely 7:45 a.m., briefcase in hand, and drive his silver Volvo to his office downtown. Fridays he worked from home, conducting virtual sessions. This predictable routine had continued without interruption for years until 3 Mondays ago, when his office assistant arrived to find the practice closed and Dr. Whitley nowhere to be found. The first person to notice something amiss was Elaine Carver, his administrative assistant of 8 years. When Dr. Whitley failed to appear and didn't answer his phone, she waited an hour before calling his neighbor, Robert Finch. Robert, a retired postal worker who often collected Marcus's mail when he was away, agreed to check on him. "I knocked and called out his name," Robert would later tell Detective Brandt. "When no one answered, I used the spare key he'd given me for emergencies. The house was dead quiet. Everything looked normal at first glance, no mess, no signs of struggle. But then I noticed the bedroom door was missing. Not open, missing, removed completely from its hinges. And there was this smell, not strong but strange, like chemicals and something else I couldn't place." Robert had ventured further into the house, calling Marcus's name with increasing urgency. In the kitchen, everything appeared ordinary. Dishes drying on the rack, a half-empty coffee mug on the counter, a notepad with a grocery list. Nothing suggested violence or distress. Then Robert opened the refrigerator. Detective Brandt now stood where Robert had stood 3 days ago, staring at the contents. The refrigerator had been emptied of all food. The shelves had been meticulously cleaned with bleach. Forensics had confirmed this, and the only items remaining were the 10 packages containing human tongues. Each one was wrapped in wax paper sealed with clear tape, and each bore a date written in the same careful handwriting, dates spanning back 8 years, with the most recent being just 2 weeks ago. "We need to find him," Brandt said to her partner, Detective James Morris, either as a victim or a suspect. The search for Dr. Marcus Whitley began in earnest. His car was still parked in the garage. His passport remained in his desk drawer. His credit cards hadn't been used since his disappearance. His phone was found on his bedside table, powered off. The trail was cold from the start. As detectives dug deeper into Whitley's life, puzzling inconsistencies emerged. His patient records were meticulously kept, with progress notes for every session except for 10 clients. These files contained only basic information: names, addresses, phone numbers, and initial assessment reports. No treatment plans, no progress notes, no billing records. When contacted, none of the phone numbers were in service, and the addresses led to vacant lots or buildings that had been demolished years ago. More disturbing was what forensics discovered in the basement. Behind a false wall in the utility room, investigators found a soundproof space about 12 feet square. The room contained a reclining chair bolted to the floor, with restraints attached to the arms and legs. A small table held various dental tools, surgical instruments, and bottles of chemicals that matched those detected in the refrigerated tongues. The walls were lined with cork, and a sophisticated recording system was set up in one corner. Dr. Janine Wang, the county medical examiner, confirmed what investigators had already suspected. The tongues belonged to multiple victims, all adults, varying in age and gender. Each had been surgically removed with precise skill, then preserved through a complex chemical process that maintained tissue integrity. Most disturbingly, the tongues showed signs of being removed while the victims were still alive. Whoever did this has medical training, Dr. Wang concluded. The cuts are clean, professional. This isn't the work of someone who learned from watching videos online. This person knows human anatomy intimately. The question that haunted the investigation: where were the victims these tongues belonged to? Were they still alive, rendered permanently mute by a sadistic attacker? Or were they dead, their bodies disposed of in ways that had left no trace? As investigators combed through Whitley's life, they discovered a private journal hidden inside a hollowed-out medical text. The entries were sparse and clinical, devoid of emotion or explanation. They contained what appeared to be phonetic notations, descriptions of speech patterns, and occasional references to subjects numbered 1 through 10. The final entry, dated the day before Whitley's disappearance, consisted of a single line: "The experiment concludes tomorrow. The final voice will complete the chorus." 2 weeks into the investigation, Detective Brandt received a package at the station. Inside was a USB drive containing a single audio file. The recording featured 10 distinct voices reciting the same phrase: "I have given my voice to the silence," followed by what sounded like choral singing without words, just haunting vocalizations that made the hairs on Brandt's arms stand up. The recording ended with Dr. Whitley's voice, instantly recognizable from videos on his professional website. "You've found my collection by now," he said calmly. "You may even understand what I've done, though I doubt it. Each tongue represents a voice that needed to be silenced, voices that spread lies, that manipulated, that destroyed lives with words. I've created something pure from them, something honest. Don't look for the bodies, they're not dead. They live among you, unable to deceive anymore. As for me, I've taken my own voice to join them. We are the silent chorus now." 3 days later, a hiker found Dr. Whitley's Volvo parked at the entrance to a nature preserve 50 miles from Millview. Inside the trunk was a sealed cooler containing a single tongue, freshly preserved. DNA testing would later confirm it belonged to Marcus Whitley himself. To this day, none of the victims have been identified. Occasionally, in towns across 3 states, there are reports of individuals who appear suddenly, unable to speak, bearing surgical scars beneath their chins. They can write, they can function, but they cannot or will not explain what happened to them. Some have tried to communicate through writing, but their stories are inconsistent, confused, as if their memories have been altered along with their anatomy. Detective Sarah Brandt still keeps the case file on her desk. Sometimes, late at night when the station is quiet, she listens to the recording, trying to decipher any clue in the strange chorus of the voiceless. And sometimes she swears she can hear them trying to form words, warnings, perhaps, or confessions. But without tongues, without voice, their secrets remain locked away, preserved like specimens in a madman's refrigerator, silent testimonies to an obsession no one fully understands. In Millview, residents now lock their doors. They think twice before making appointments with new doctors, and they pay closer attention to those who cannot speak, wondering if they're looking into the eyes of one of Dr. Whitley's subjects, or if Whitley himself is still out there, his own tongue removed, watching and listening to a world of voices he sought to silence. The house on Maple Street remains empty, a silent monument to unspeakable crimes. The refrigerator has been removed, the basement sealed off. But sometimes neighbors report hearing strange sounds in the night, not voices exactly, but something like humming, a chorus without words, drifting through the darkness like a lullaby for the silenced. Crime 7, when they lifted the mattress, the support beams had been hollowed out and filled with stacks of copied documents, driver's licenses, report cards, prescriptions. All belonged to different children. None were ever reported missing, but the last sheet had a handwritten note, "Keep these, the originals are gone." The discovery happened on a Tuesday. Not a remarkable Tuesday by any means, just an ordinary September afternoon in Millbrook, Nebraska. The kind of day when the summer heat still clung to the sidewalks, but the promise of autumn hung in the air. Officer Dana Reeves had responded to what seemed like a routine call, an abandoned property complaint from neighbors about 1422 Sycamore Lane. The small ranch-style home had belonged to Arthur Whitman, a 68-year-old retired high school janitor who lived in Millbrook his entire life. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, unremarkable. He'd wave from his porch, occasionally attend community barbecues, but largely kept to himself. When mail began piling up in his box and his lawn grew unkempt, a neighbor finally called the police. No one had seen Arthur for nearly 3 weeks. Dana Reeves had been with the Millbrook Police Department for 12 years. She'd handled missing persons before, domestic disputes, even the occasional armed robbery. But nothing in her training had prepared her for what she would find in Arthur Whitman's bedroom. The house itself appeared ordinary at first glance. Modest furnishings, dated wallpaper, a kitchen with unwashed dishes in the sink. The living room contained a worn recliner facing an old television set, a bookshelf filled with paperback westerns, and framed photographs of landscapes, but notably no people. Officer Reeves noted that the home smelled stale but not putrid. No signs of violence or struggle presented themselves. In Arthur's bedroom, a twin bed with a floral comforter stood against the wall. The closet contained neatly pressed shirts and slacks, shoes lined up in perfect symmetry. It was while searching for identification or emergency contact information that Dana lifted the mattress, looking for hidden valuables or documents. The bed frame beneath had been modified. The wooden slats supporting the mattress had been carefully hollowed out, creating 5 long compartments. Each was filled with meticulously organized papers protected by clear plastic sleeves. Officer Reeves pulled out the first stack and felt her stomach tighten. A photocopied driver's permit belonging to Eliza Jennings, age 16, dated 1998. Behind it, Eliza's report cards from 6th through 9th grade. Medical records showing vaccinations, a tonsillectomy at age 7, allergies to penicillin and ragweed, a photocopy of a birthday card signed "Love, Grandma." And at the back of the stack, a newspaper clipping about Eliza's victory at a regional spelling bee. The second compartment contained similar documents for a boy named Tyler Washington, age 14. The third held papers belonging to Caitlin Myers, 12. The fourth, Samuel Delgado, 15. The fifth compartment, partially empty, contained information about Jamie Wilson, age 13. In total, documentation for 27 children filled Arthur Whitman's bed frame. The papers spanned nearly 3 decades, from 1992 to 2019. Each collection told the fragmented story of a young life, academic achievements, medical visits, family celebrations, hobbies, and each one ended abruptly, with no documentation beyond a certain point. The handwritten note that had been placed atop the final stack read in full, "Keep these. The originals are gone. I couldn't save them, but I preserved what I could." Dana called for backup immediately. Within hours, the quiet house on Sycamore Lane became a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the property as forensic technicians cataloged every document, photographed every room, and searched for fingerprints, DNA, any evidence that might explain what Arthur Whitman had been doing with these records. As news traveled through Millbrook, the community reaction transformed from confusion to horror. Parents clutched their children closer. Neighbors who had known Arthur for decades questioned everything about their interactions with him. Had he been watching the neighborhood children? Had anyone gone missing in Millbrook over the years? Detective Marcus Holloway was assigned as lead investigator. A 20-year veteran with salt and pepper hair and deep creases around his eyes, Holloway approached the case methodically. His first task was determining if these children actually existed, and if they did, what had happened to them. The most disturbing aspect, Detective Holloway would later confide to his wife, is that none of these kids match any missing persons reports. Not locally, not in the national database. Every name, every date of birth, every address we've checked has led to nothing. It's like they were real enough to leave a paper trail, but not real enough to be missed. Forensic accountant Lee Dias traced Arthur Whitman's finances back 30 years. His income had been modest but consistent, a janitor's salary, then a pension. No unexplained deposits, no suspicious withdrawals. He had taken one vacation every summer, always driving, never flying. Credit card records showed gas purchases in multiple states: Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming. He was traveling, Detective Holloway noted. Annual trips lasting approximately 2 weeks, but where exactly was he going and why? 3 days into the investigation, the basement door was discovered. Hidden behind a bookshelf in Arthur's study, the door had been wallpapered to match the surrounding walls. It opened to reveal a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The basement contained a single room, meticulously organized. One wall held a large corkboard covered with maps of the Midwest, colored pins marking small towns across multiple states. Another wall featured a desk with a computer, outdated but functional, and several external hard drives. The third wall contained filing cabinets, and the fourth wall had been converted into a darkroom for developing photographs. The filing cabinets contained original documents, birth certificates, school records, medical files that matched the photocopies found in the bed frame. The computer held encrypted folders named with the children's initials. The hard drives contained thousands of photographs. None of the images were explicit or showed any abuse. Instead, they documented children from a distance, playing in parks, walking to school, sitting in restaurants with adults presumed to be their parents. The photographs had been taken through windows from parked cars across streets, the unwitting subjects never aware they were being watched. Detective Holloway brought in FBI Special Agent Renee Parsons, a specialist in crimes against children. Together, they pieced together a theory. Arthur Whitman had been tracking children who matched a specific profile, all between the ages of 12 and 16, all from small towns, all seemingly ordinary kids from middle-class families. But why and what had happened to them? The breakthrough came 6 days into the investigation, when officers found Arthur Whitman's journal hidden inside a hollowed-out Western novel. The entries spanned decades, written in a neat, precise handwriting that grew shakier in the most recent pages. The journal revealed that Arthur had once had a daughter named Lily. In 1990, when Lily was 14, she had disappeared while walking home from school. Despite an extensive search, no trace of her was ever found. The police investigation eventually went cold. No suspects were identified. No body was recovered. Arthur's marriage had collapsed under the weight of grief. His wife left Millbrook, remarried, started a new family. Arthur stayed, took the job at the high school, and began his lonely vigil. The journal entries grew increasingly disturbing as years passed. Arthur became convinced that Lily's disappearance was connected to other missing children, children whose absences had gone unreported because they had been taken by their own parents. He believed he had identified a network of adults who were trafficking their children, moving frequently to avoid detection. They sell their own kids, one entry read. Move town to town, change names, the system doesn't notice. Teachers don't ask questions when a new student doesn't show up. Doctors don't follow up when appointments are missed. Neighbors don't know enough to realize something's wrong, but I notice, I keep track. Someone has to remember these children existed. Each summer, Arthur would travel to small towns across the Midwest, following leads he'd gleaned from obituaries, school registrations, property records. He would identify children he believed were at risk, document their existence, and then watch for signs they were about to disappear. But had Arthur Whitman uncovered an actual trafficking network, or had grief twisted his perception of reality? Had he become a documentarian of genuine crimes, or had he constructed an elaborate fantasy to process his own loss? The most recent journal entry, dated just 3 weeks before his disappearance, provided a chilling conclusion. Found Jamie's family moving again. Third time in 2 years. Confronted the father this time. He knew who I was, said I shouldn't have interfered. I'm not safe now. Neither is my evidence. Making copies tonight. Will hide them where they'll be found if something happens to me. Arthur Whitman's body was discovered 2 days later in his car at the bottom of Lake McConoy, 80 miles from Millbrook. The medical examiner determined he had been dead for approximately 3 weeks. The cause of death, a single gunshot wound to the head. A revolver was found in his right hand. FBI agents investigated the families Arthur had documented. 5 were located. All insisted they had moved frequently for legitimate reasons, job changes, financial difficulties, family health issues. All expressed shock and horror at Arthur's allegations. All cooperated fully with the investigation. Jamie Wilson's family could not be located. Their last known address in Hastings, Nebraska, was now occupied by a young couple who had never heard of the Wilsons. School records confirmed Jamie had been enrolled in the local middle school for 3 months before being withdrawn due to family relocation. 1 year after the discovery at 1422 Sycamore Lane, the investigation remains officially open, but has yielded few answers. Was Arthur Whitman a disturbed individual whose grief manifested as an elaborate conspiracy theory, or had he uncovered something sinister that ultimately led to his death? In Millbrook, opinions are divided. Some believe Arthur was mentally ill, a tragic figure whose delusions drove him to suicide. Others think he was a vigilante who sacrificed himself to expose crimes that continue unseen in America's heartland. The documents from Arthur's bedframe remain in evidence storage at the Millbrook Police Department. Sometimes, late at night, Detective Holloway returns to the file, studying the photocopied fragments of 27 young lives, wondering if any of these children are still out there, if any could still be saved. And in small towns across the Midwest, when a family moves away suddenly, when a child stops coming to school and no one asks why, a few people remember the story of Arthur Whitman and wonder what secrets might be hidden behind their neighbors' closed doors. The bed frame was stuffed with photocopies. The originals are gone. Crime ate all four walls in the nursery, chewed, gnawed, stripped down to the drywall. Some were deep enough to expose insulation. Embedded in one corner was a baby pacifier, fused into the wall with dried saliva. DNA tests confirmed it didn't belong to the baby. The Langford family had moved into the modest two-story colonial in Oak Ridge, Michigan, just 11 months before the incident. Sarah and Michael, both in their early 30s, had been searching for the perfect place to raise their daughter, Emma, who had just turned 1. The neighborhood was known for its safety, good schools, and quiet streets lined with maple trees that turned brilliantly orange in the fall. Sarah was a pediatric nurse who had reduced her hours to part-time after Emma was born. Michael worked remotely as a software engineer for a company based in Chicago. They were, by all accounts, an ordinary couple living an ordinary life. Neighbors would later describe them as friendly but private, the kind of people who would wave and smile but rarely initiated deeper conversations. On the morning of April 17, 2023, Sarah called her mother, Diane, at precisely 9:37 a.m. The call lasted 2 minutes and 14 seconds. According to phone records, this was unusually brief for their morning check-ins, which typically stretched to 30 minutes or more. When questioned later, Diane would recall that Sarah sounded distracted and mentioned something about a strange smell in Emma's room. She thought maybe an animal had died in the wall, Diane told investigators. She said she'd been smelling it for days, but Michael couldn't detect it. Security footage from the Langford's Ring doorbell camera showed the mail carrier delivering packages at 10:22 a.m. The carrier, Jeffrey Williams, would later testify that he heard what sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor from inside the house. He thought nothing of it at the time. At 11:47 a.m., Sarah sent a text message to Michael, who was working at a local coffee shop that morning to escape construction noise on their street. The message read, "Come home, something's wrong with Emma's room." Michael arrived home at 12:09 p.m. The Ring camera captured his hurried entrance, the front door left ajar in his haste. 17 minutes later, at 12:26 p.m., the camera recorded Michael running out of the house, phone pressed to his ear, his face drained of color. The 911 call was placed at 12:27 p.m. "I need police and ambulance. My wife, she's the baby's room, please hurry," Michael told the dispatcher, his breathing erratic, words fragmented. Officer Tanya Rodriguez was first to arrive on scene at 12:41 p.m. Her body camera footage would later become central to the investigation. As she entered the home, the camera captured Michael sitting on the bottom step of the staircase, head in his hands, rocking slightly back and forth. She was fine this morning, he repeated. She was fine. Officer Rodriguez proceeded upstairs, her footsteps creaking on the wooden steps. The hallway was dim despite the midday hour, all curtains drawn throughout the upper floor. At the end of the hall was a door painted pale yellow with a wooden sign spelling Emma in pastel letters. What Rodriguez found inside that room would haunt her for years to come. Sarah Langford was sitting cross-legged in the center of the nursery, surrounded by stuffed animals arranged in a perfect circle. Emma was nowhere to be seen. The crib stood empty, its sheets torn and twisted. The changing table had been pushed against the window, blocking most of the natural light. But it was the walls that commanded attention. Every surface covered in bite marks, human bite marks, hundreds of them, some fresh enough that the drywall dust still hung in the air. Others older, with yellowed edges suggesting they had been made days, perhaps weeks earlier. "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez called out. "Sarah, where's Emma?" Sarah didn't respond immediately. When she finally looked up, her expression was eerily calm. "She needed to go back inside," was all she said, her voice soft and melodic. "They told me she needed to go back inside." A thorough search of the house revealed no sign of baby Emma. The basement door was locked from the outside with 3 separate padlocks that weren't standard to the home. When officers broke through, they found only empty storage boxes and cleaning supplies. No evidence of the child. The investigation that followed would uncover layers of a story far more complex than anyone initially imagined. Michael's parents arrived from Toledo that evening. His father, Robert Langford, appeared genuinely shocked by the situation. His mother, Catherine, however, asked a question that investigators found peculiar. "Did you check the walls?" When questioned about this statement, Catherine explained that Sarah had been sending her strange text messages for weeks about something living in the walls of Emma's room. She had dismissed it as new mother anxiety, especially since Sarah had been diagnosed with postpartum depression 3 months after Emma's birth. "I told Michael to take her to the doctor," Catherine said during her interview, "but he said she wouldn't go, said she was fine when he was home." Dr. Elaine Mercer, Sarah's psychiatrist, revealed during questioning that Sarah had missed her last 3 appointments. In their final session, 6 weeks before the incident, Sarah had mentioned hearing scratching sounds coming from her daughter's room at night. "I recommended increasing her medication," Dr. Mercer stated. "She refused. She was convinced the sounds were real." The investigation took a disturbing turn when forensic analysis of the bite marks revealed an unexpected detail. While many of the marks matched Sarah's dental records, approximately 30% of them came from a different source. The DNA extracted from the saliva in these marks didn't match anyone in the family. Even more puzzling was the pacifier embedded in the wall. Laboratory tests confirmed it wasn't Emma's. The DNA belonged to a child who wasn't in any database. The pacifier itself was an older model that had been discontinued 5 years earlier. As detectives dug deeper into the house's history, they discovered that before the Langfords, the home had been vacant for nearly 2 years. The previous owners, the Cartwrights, had moved out suddenly, selling the house at a significantly reduced price. When contacted, Alina Cartwright was initially reluctant to discuss the property. After persistent questioning, she finally admitted, "We heard things too. My husband thought I was imagining it, but I wasn't. Our son Thomas, he was 3, started talking about the baby in the wall who wanted to play with him at night." The Cartwrights had never had another child besides Thomas. On day 5 of the investigation, cadaver dogs were brought in. They showed interest in the nursery walls, but nowhere else. When sections of the wall were removed, investigators found nothing within the structure itself. No remains, no evidence of tampering with the framework of the house. The only physical evidence recovered was a small, weathered photograph tucked between 2 wooden studs. It showed a baby, approximately 6-8 months old, wearing clothing that fashion experts dated to the late 1960s. Written on the back in faded blue ink, Josephine, 1967. Property records showed the house had been built in 1965. The original owners were listed as Raymond and Irene Foster. Further research revealed that the Fosters had lost an infant daughter named Josephine in 1967. The official cause of death was recorded as SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. 2 weeks into the investigation, with Sarah Langford now in psychiatric care and Michael staying with his parents, Emma was still missing. No Amber Alert had produced results. No ransom demands had been made. It was as if the child had simply vanished. On the 17th day, Detective Marcus Holloway, who had been leading the investigation, received a call from an elderly woman named Greta Powell, who lived 3 houses down from the Langfords. "I should have come forward sooner," she said, her voice trembling. "But I wasn't sure if what I saw was real or just my old eyes playing tricks." Greta explained that on the morning of April 17th, around 10:30 a.m., she had been tending to her front garden when she saw Sarah Langford walking down the street, carrying a bundle wrapped in a yellow blanket. What struck Greta as odd was Sarah's attire, a nightgown in the middle of the morning, and the fact that she was barefoot despite the cool spring temperature. "She was walking toward the old well in Oak Ridge Park," Greta said, "the one they covered up years ago but never properly filled in." A search team was dispatched immediately to the location, an overgrown area of the park that few residents still visited. The concrete slab covering the well showed signs of recent disturbance. When removed, search teams made a heartbreaking discovery. Baby Emma's yellow blanket was floating on the water's surface, 30 feet below. But Emma herself was not there. The investigation continued for months, becoming one of Michigan's most perplexing missing persons cases. Sarah Langford remained at Lakeview Psychiatric Facility, diagnosed with severe postpartum psychosis complicated by what her doctors called environmental triggers. She maintained that she had never harmed Emma, that they had taken her child into the walls. Michael filed for divorce 6 months later. He sold the house for a fraction of its value to a developer who promptly demolished it. Where the 2-story colonial once stood, there is now a small community garden. Local residents tend to avoid it after dark. Emma Langford was officially declared dead 1 year after her disappearance, though her body was never found. The case remains technically open. In a final, unsettling development, the new owners of the lot reported finding baby items, pacifiers, small socks, tiny shoes appearing mysteriously in the garden. Each time, the items would be collected as potential evidence, but DNA testing never provided matches to any known missing children. The investigation remains at a standstill. Some in the Oak Ridge community still claim to hear infant cries near the empty lot at night, particularly during April, when the lilacs bloom and the spring air carries sounds farther than usual. The bite marks on the walls of Emma's nursery were photographed, analyzed, and cataloged into evidence. But their purpose, why Sarah felt compelled to gnaw at the walls, why someone else had done the same, what they were trying to reach or release from within, remains a mystery that haunts investigators to this day. Crime 9, no envelope, no note, just a handful of matted blonde hair wrapped with a rubber band. Inside it, a broken earring and a matchbook from a diner 3 states away. When they checked the security camera, the footage had been wiped, but one frame remained of a man with no eyebrows, smiling directly at the lens. Barbara Winters found it on a Tuesday morning. She had just returned from dropping her children off at school and was sorting through the mail when her fingers touched something soft and unfamiliar. The sight of the hair made her stomach turn. She let it fall onto the kitchen counter and stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. For several minutes she just stood there, staring at the clump of blonde strands that looked so much like her 19-year-old daughter Ellie's hair. Ellie had been away at Northern Valley College in Vermont for almost 8 months now. Their conversations had grown shorter and less frequent as the semester progressed. It's normal, Barbara's husband Paul had assured her. She's finding her independence. But something about the way Ellie's voice had changed during their last phone call, a flatness, a hesitation, had been gnawing at Barbara for weeks. The Winters lived in Pinehurst, Massachusetts, a town of just under 15,000 people where the crime rate barely registered. Paul worked as an accountant at a firm in Boston, commuting an hour each way. Their son Tyler was 16, quiet and studious. They had moved to Pinehurst when Ellie was 7, seeking the security of a small town after a home invasion in their previous Boston neighborhood had left Barbara with persistent anxiety and insomnia. The police arrived 40 minutes after Barbara's call. Officer Denise Calloway was young, perhaps 30, with dark hair pulled back tightly and a notepad that remained mostly empty as Barbara explained what she had found. She placed the hair in an evidence bag with latex-gloved hands, examining the broken earring, a small silver hoop with a turquoise stone, and the matchbook from Rosie's truck stop in Ohio. "Do you recognize the earring?" Officer Calloway asked. Barbara nodded slowly. "It's Ellie's. I bought her that pair for her 18th birthday last year." Officer Calloway made a note. "And when did you last speak with your daughter?" 11 days ago, Barbara's voice cracked. "I've texted her since then, but she only responded with one-word answers. I thought she was just busy with finals." The officer nodded, her expression careful and measured. "We'll need to check your mailbox for fingerprints, and I'd like to see that security footage you mentioned." Paul had installed the camera system after moving to Pinehurst, old habits from city life. It covered the driveway, front door, and mailbox. When they reviewed the footage from the past 24 hours, they found nothing but static from 2:14 a.m. to 5:37 a.m. Except for that single frame at 3:22 a.m., a pale man with completely bare eyebrows looking directly into the camera with an unsettling smile, his teeth too white against the night. Detective Marcus Reed arrived at the Winters' home the following morning. In his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and deep-set eyes, he had the weathered look of someone who had seen too much. He examined the photograph they had printed of the eyebrowless man, turning it over in his hands as if the back might reveal something the front concealed. "Have you called the college?" he asked. Paul nodded. "They said Ellie hasn't attended classes for the past week. Her roommate thought she had come home early for break." Detective Reed's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. "We'll need her computer, phone records, bank statements, anything that might tell us who she's been in contact with." The investigation began slowly, methodically. They learned that Ellie had withdrawn $200 from an ATM on campus 9 days ago. Her phone had last pinged a tower near the Vermont-New York border 8 days ago. Her social media accounts had been inactive since then. 3 days into the investigation, they received the first call from Ellie's phone. Barbara answered, her hands trembling. "Hello," she whispered. There was silence on the other end, then breathing, slow and deliberate, before the call disconnected. The number was traced to a rest stop on Interstate 90, just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, less than 20 miles from Rosie's truck stop. Detective Reed assembled a team to review security footage from the rest stop and the truck stop. Meanwhile, he interviewed Ellie's friends and professors. A pattern emerged. Over the past 2 months, Ellie had grown withdrawn. She had dropped out of the campus theater group she had once loved. Her roommate mentioned a new friend, someone older who didn't attend the college. She never brought them around, the roommate said, but she'd get these calls and then disappear for hours. 5 days after the hair arrived, they found Ellie's car. It was parked behind an abandoned factory in Albany, New York. The interior was immaculate, too clean, Detective Reed noted. No fingerprints, not even Ellie's. In the trunk, they found her suitcase, neatly packed with clothes for a weekend trip. And beneath that, a notebook containing pages of what appeared to be coded messages. Numbers and letters arranged in columns, circled phrases that meant nothing to the investigators. Barbara broke down when she saw the notebook. "This isn't Ellie's handwriting," she sobbed. "It's close, but it's not hers." The following day, another package arrived at the Winters' home. This time, it contained a Polaroid photograph of Ellie sitting at a diner booth, staring blankly at the camera. She was wearing the same clothes she had last been seen in on campus. On the back of the photo, written in handwriting that mimicked Ellie's but wasn't quite right, "I'm learning so much." Detective Reed placed officers outside the Winters' home. The FBI joined the investigation, focusing on the possibility of an interstate abduction. They identified the diner and the Polaroid as Rosie's truck stop. When agents visited, they found a waitress who remembered seeing Ellie 3 days earlier. "She was with a man," the waitress recalled. "No eyebrows, which is why I noticed him. Didn't talk much. She seemed distant, not scared exactly, more like she was somewhere else in her mind." The security footage from the truck stop had also been tampered with, but they managed to recover fragments. In one clip, the eyebrowless man could be seen speaking intensely to Ellie, who nodded mechanically as he talked. His hands moved constantly as he spoke, like he was conducting an orchestra only he could hear. On day 12, they traced a cell signal from Ellie's phone to an apartment complex in Detroit, Michigan. When the tactical team breached the third-floor apartment, they found it empty except for a chair in the center of the living room, a video camera on a tripod, and walls covered with photographs of the Winters' house, some taken years ago, others just days before. In the bathroom, they found blonde hair in the sink and a collection of makeup remover wipes stained with what appeared to be theatrical adhesive. In the kitchen trash, packaging for false eyebrows. That evening, as Barbara sat at her kitchen table staring at the phone, willing it to ring with news of her daughter, Tyler approached her with his laptop. "Mom," he said quietly, "I found something." He showed her a website, a forum for what they called reality artists, people who orchestrated elaborate disappearances as a form of performance art. Some lasted days, others months. There were discussions about the ethics of involving unwitting family members, debates about how far was too far. And there among the usernames was EllieMe21, Ellie's childhood nickname and birth year. Posts dating back 6 months detailed plans for what she called the Dissolution Project, a staged disappearance designed to explore the boundaries between identity and absence. The last post from 2 weeks ago read simply, Phase 2 begins tomorrow. The observer becomes the observed. Barbara called Detective Reed immediately. As they combed through the forum, they discovered that these reality artists often worked with accomplices, people who helped stage evidence and maintain the illusion of danger while the subject orchestrated everything from a distance. 3 days later, a final package arrived at the Winters' home. Inside was a USB drive containing a video of Ellie, seated in the chair from the Detroit apartment. She looked tired but unharmed. "By now you've probably found the forum," she said to the camera. "I'm sorry for the pain this caused, but I needed to understand something about disappearance and what remains when a person is gone. The man in your videos is Jeremy, a graduate student in my experimental theater class. The hair was mine, cut weeks ago and saved. The earring was deliberately broken." She paused, looking down. "I'm coming home tomorrow. I don't expect you to forgive me right away." The Winters waited at home the next day, but Ellie didn't arrive. Detective Reed tracked her last known location to a bus station in Chicago. Security footage showed her boarding a bus to Minneapolis, alone, carrying a backpack, her hair now cut short and dyed brown. 3 weeks later, Barbara received a postcard from Seattle. On the front, the city skyline. On the back, in Ellie's real handwriting, "Some dissolutions can't be reversed. I'm safe, but I can't come back to who I was. Please don't look for me. I'll find my way forward." The investigation remained officially open, but as months passed, it became clear that Ellie had no intention of returning. The FBI eventually classified her as a voluntary missing person. The forum where she had posted was shut down after other reality artists took their projects too far, resulting in actual criminal charges. For Barbara, the nights were the hardest. She would often find herself standing by the mailbox at odd hours, hoping for another message, another clue. Paul threw himself into work. Tyler grew even quieter, spending hours researching similar cases online. A year after Ellie's disappearance, Barbara was sorting through mail when she found an unmarked envelope. Inside was a newspaper clipping about an emerging photographer in Portland whose work explored the liminality of identity and the performance of self. The artist was unnamed, but the accompanying photograph showed an installation featuring a chair, a camera, and walls covered with family photos. In the corner of the clipping, written in Ellie's handwriting, "Some observing is an act of love." Barbara never showed the clipping to Detective Reed. Some mysteries she had come to understand weren't meant to be solved by others. Some disappearances weren't about being lost, but about finding a different way to be found. She placed the clipping in a box beneath her bed, alongside the evidence bags containing a clump of hair, a broken earring, and a matchbook from a diner 3 states away, artifacts from the daughter she had known, and signposts toward the one she might someday meet again. Story 10. The quaint costume shop was in its final days, liquidating its aged stock. Amidst the dwindling items, a woman's hand reached for a mask perched upon a dusty shelf. Its intricate features were both delicate and disconcertingly lifelike. Placing it on the counter, the cashier hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's not ours." Puzzled, the woman checked for a tag, but none was to be found. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to take the mysterious mask home. That very night, she awoke to a soft, rustling sound, a whisper of fabric in motion. Searching her surroundings, she realized the mask was no longer resting on her dresser where she had left it. Instead, it sat ominously on her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her. The woman, known as Catherine Reed, was later discovered by her concerned neighbor. The front door stood slightly ajar, allowing the morning light to spill into the dim interior of her home. What awaited inside would forever haunt the minds of those who bore witness. Catherine lay lifeless upon the bedroom floor, the mask conspicuously absent. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene as forensics meticulously documented every detail. The rhythmic clicking of the shutters provided a backdrop to the solemn voices exchanging observations. "No signs of forced entry," remarked an officer, jotting down notes in his pad. The detective, with a keen eye for the subtlest of clues, took in the room's nuances. A partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass on the nightstand. Everything seemed ordinary except for the woman who would never open her eyes again. The medical examiner, with a solemn expression, declared the cause of death initially elusive. No visible wounds, no traces of a struggle, only a frozen mask of terror etched upon Catherine's face. Leaning in for a closer examination, the detective whispered, "Something frightened her to her demise." Catherine, an unassuming art appraiser, was known for her meticulous nature and passion for authenticity. Colleagues spoke of her exceptional eye for detail, her ability to detect even the subtlest of forgeries. Could her unparalleled talent have unwittingly led to her tragic end? Footage from the costume shop revealed an unsettling anomaly. The cashier's perplexed reaction to the mask was apparent. Consultation with the shop owner only deepened the mystery. "We never stocked an item like this," he affirmed, shaking his head in disbelief. A visit to the now empty shop unearthed a disconcerting revelation. The owner, visibly agitated, confessed, "That mask appeared during our clearance sale. Its origin remains a mystery. It was never part of our inventory." Pressed further, he reluctantly divulged, such occurrences were not uncommon after acquiring items from the estate sale of a collector with a tragic demise. A breakthrough emerged when forensics uncovered microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips. She was clutching onto something, the lab technician elucidated. The composition of these fibers is peculiar, an enigmatic blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance that eludes all known databases. The investigation unraveled a chilling pattern of death spanning decades, each victim acquiring an uncanny mask shortly before their demise. Their lifeless expressions frozen in terror, each case a perplexing enigma that defied resolution. A retired detective, privy to a similar case, shared a clandestine meeting with the current investigator. Passing a weathered file across the table, he revealed a startling discovery. Inscribed within each mask, concealed behind the lining, were ancient symbols. A scholar we consulted posited their association with a ritual of soul transference. A pivotal breakthrough materialized in the form of a journal clandestinely stowed behind a loose baseboard in Catherine's residence. Her final entry chronicled a growing sense of unease, a pervasive feeling of being surveilled within her own abode. Delving into the mask's origins following the cashier's cryptic reaction, Catherine drew connections to a series of mysterious deaths. In frantic script she penned, "The mask moves, it watches me in my slumber." Inside, I found markings akin to those in unsolved cases. The collector of these masks met the same fate. Each mask claims a life before moving on, an entity seeking a new host once recognized for its true nature. The detective meticulously pieced together the puzzle, the peculiar fibers, Catherine's inquest, the recurring motif of terror-stricken deaths. The medical examiner, after exhaustive examination, concluded the cause of death as cardiac arrest induced by extreme fear. What unspeakable horror could provoke such paralyzing terror that one's heart ceases to beat? The investigation took a macabre turn upon the discovery of surveillance footage from a neighboring residence. Unnoticed by the initial team, the footage captured a figure exiting Catherine's home under the veil of darkness, donning a mask resembling hers. The figure moved with Catherine's distinct gait, yet something was amiss, as if her very essence had been usurped by a mechanical specter. An alert was issued for the missing mask, but it remained elusive until reports surfaced 6 months later of a peculiar mask surfacing in a vintage emporium across the nation. By the time investigators arrived, it had already changed hands, the buyer's identity shrouded in mystery. The case, shrouded in enigma, remains officially unresolved. The detective preserves Catherine's journal in her desk drawer, a somber reminder of a truth too uncanny for official documentation. In the stillness of the night, she startles awake, a sense of being watched enveloping her. Securing her abode, she endeavors to quell thoughts of the mask awaiting its next unwitting bearer, a vessel yearning to be inhabited, traversing from victim to victim in an eternal cycle that commenced eons ago and persists to this day. The mask lingers in the shadows, awaiting its next revelation. And when it emerges once more, another soul will awaken to the gentle stirrings of the night, only to find it drawing near as they slumber, its vacant gaze fixated upon them, craving the essence that resides behind their eyes. Story 11. The old wooden plank yielded beneath her foot, a subtle shift that captured her attention. Intrigued, she knelt down and traced her fingers along the edges, sensing the hidden gap beneath the seemingly solid floor. With delicate precision, she pried up the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow cavity beneath the house. Initially shrouded in dust and cobwebs, the space slowly revealed its secrets to her keen gaze. A mattress, a chair. And nestled in the corner, a weathered notebook, its pages adorned with a single name, her name repeated endlessly. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman, watching as she peered into the enigmatic darkness beneath her newly acquired home. Beyond the mere discovery of a hidden room, Sarah's eyes reflected a deeper fear, a violation of security, an intrusion of malevolence into what was meant to be her fresh beginning. "Please refrain from touching anything further," Detective Reed's voice, calm yet resolute, broke the silence. She flicked on her flashlight, casting light into the concealed space, unveiling walls adorned with surveillance photographs, snapshots of Sarah's daily life, captured unknowingly. A shrine of obsession, meticulously curated right beneath her unsuspecting feet. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly man named Walter Green, a recluse who had passed away without any known heirs. The property had sat vacant for months before Sarah stumbled upon it. The real estate listing had painted it as charming and in need of minor touch-ups. No mention of the sinister secrets lurking beneath had ever surfaced during the inspections or sale. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah's voice barely above a whisper. "The neighbors said he kept to himself. I was told that basement access had been sealed off ages ago. That's what the inspection report claimed." As crime scene investigators arrived, their gear clunking against the wooden floorboards, they meticulously documented the hidden chamber, extracting the mattress, chair, and haunting notebook. Forensic analysis later unveiled a myriad of fingerprints, all belonging to Walter Green, scattered throughout the concealed space. What unnerved the investigators most was the timeline they unraveled. Through utility records and dated photographs, it became evident that Walter had been surveilling Sarah for over 3 years before his demise. He had shadowed her at community events, shared the same grocery aisles, and even frequented the cafe where she occasionally worked. Yet to Sarah, he had remained a ghost, invisible and unknown. This degree of fixation often evolves, the department psychologist explained during a debrief. The subject transitions from mere fantasy to calculated planning. The hidden chamber suggests a more ominous intent. Detective Reed's investigation took a sharp turn when she interviewed Walter's former colleague from the local shopping center's maintenance crew. Fidgety and anxious, the man confessed. Walter spoke of her sometimes. Said she reminded him of someone. I thought it was harmless infatuation. I never imagined. His voice trailed off, his gaze fixed on his hands. Did he speak of any schemes involving her? Reid probed further. Not explicitly, but he had this phrase he'd repeat. Something about belonging together. I thought it was just idle chatter. Securing a warrant to search Walter's workplace locker, untouched since his passing, led to a key that unlocked a storage unit registered in his name. The metallic door rumbled open, revealing a meticulous replica of Sarah's former apartment furniture decor, even a mannequin sporting Sarah's hairstyle. The calendar hanging on the wall bore a circled date, just a week following Walter's sudden demise, marked with a single word, together. Further digging unearthed Walter's troubled past, a history of institutionalization stemming from an infatuation with a teacher diagnosed with erotomania. Released into society, he had lived incident-free for decades until Sarah unknowingly reignited his dormant fixation. Spread across the conference table at the police station, crime scene photos painted a grim picture. In his mind, he believed they shared a unique bond, destined to be united, Detective Reed pondered aloud. Could she have crossed paths with him unknowingly, sparking this fixation? A fellow detective mused. Shaking her head, Reed replied, no tangible evidence. Sometimes these obsessions require only a slight prompt, a passing smile, a lingering glance for someone with his background that could suffice. Unable to find solace in her once beloved home, Sarah opted to sell the property, haunted by the what-ifs that lingered within its walls. During the final walkthrough with her realtor, she stood in the living room, a shiver running down her spine. I can't help but wonder what might have transpired if he hadn't passed away when he did, she murmured softly. How long would I have dwelled here, unaware of his watchful eyes, unaware of the secrets concealed beneath my very feet? With Walter's demise, the case was officially closed, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, although the abduction never came to fruition. Sarah, now living far away, altered her routines, safeguarded her privacy, forever changed by the brush with peril. Occasionally, Detective Reed discreetly checked in on her, a silent reminder of how narrowly Sarah had evaded becoming another tragic headline. The cottage found new owners, oblivious to its dark past. The hidden chamber was sealed, the floorboards restored. Life carried on, yet for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor served as a haunting echo of the unseen perils that lurk, of monsters who slip through the cracks, and of victims who narrowly escape their fates. Story 12. The aged apartment held its secrets, pipes that groaned, floorboards that whispered tales of the past. But the new resident sensed something more, something unsettling in the night. The footsteps she heard were too precise, too deliberate to be mere echoes of the building settling. They descended from above, measured and slow, though she resided on the topmost floor. One evening, gathering her courage, she rapped on the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. Then, a single knock replied from within the confines of the ceiling itself. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the strange incident to herself, convincing her mind it was the timbers adjusting, or perhaps a small creature seeking refuge in the attic space. Despite her efforts to drown out the methodical footfalls that traversed the ceiling each night, she found no respite. Elevating the volume of her television, donning headphones to bed, she attempted to shield herself from the unseen presence that paced above her in the shadows of the night. Detective Morris was introduced to the apartment's enigma when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. Removing a section of drywall near Sarah's unit to mend a leak, the worker uncovered a narrow passage not accounted for in the building's blueprints. Illuminated by his flashlight, the space revealed a makeshift living quarters, discarded food wrappers, empty water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a weathered notebook. Alerted by the building superintendent, Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, found the worker visibly shaken, muttering about someone dwelling within the walls, someone watching. The notebook chronicled detailed observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routines, visitors, meals, entertainment preferences, even her sleeping patterns. The once neat handwriting devolved into erratic scribbles, interspersed with cryptic symbols. "The subject resists my influence," the final entry lamented. "She defies me. No one disregards me." Forensic experts meticulously combed the crawl space, uncovering fingerprints that eluded identification in any database. They unearthed a labyrinth of passages intricately woven through the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades according to structural assessments. The passages linked to 5 separate apartments, culminating in observation points disguised as innocuous fixtures or minor damages, with a sole destination: Sarah Coleman's abode. Interviews with current residents yielded no anomalies, just the usual hum of apartment life. Former inhabitants, however, painted a different picture. 3 past tenants of Sarah's unit recounted sensations of being watched or unexplained disturbances. One departed after a mere fortnight, their experiences left unvoiced due to fear of sounding paranoid. A breakthrough emerged when forensics uncovered microscopic blood traces in one of the crawl spaces. DNA analysis traced the blood to Martin Weaver, a former tenant who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior. Despite a missing persons report filed by his family, the case had grown cold. Martin had resided directly beneath Sarah's apartment. Revisiting Martin's disappearance, Detective Morris learned of his grievances regarding noises from the unit above his own. Confronting the occupant, Edward, a reclusive man, Martin disappeared shortly thereafter. Edward vacated the premises the subsequent month, leaving no forwarding details. A pattern emerged from Edward's past residences. He favored top-floor units, maintained minimal social ties, and departed without warning. Further investigation unveiled Edward's ownership of remote rural land. A cabin on the property housed a sinister trove of photographs and notes of residents from various apartment buildings, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver. Blueprints of ventilation systems, diagrams of structural vulnerabilities, and meticulous journals detailing the specimen's observations and habitat maintenance filled the space. A corkboard adorned with missing persons reports, 6 in total, all linked to former buildings Edward had inhabited. Beneath the board, gouges in the wooden floor hinted at prolonged dragging of a heavy object. Cadaver dogs led investigators to freshly disturbed soil behind the cabin, unveiling multiple graves. As forensic experts endeavored to identify the victims, Detective Morris returned to Sarah's building. Though the crawl spaces were sealed, residents sporadically reported faint noises. During the installation of enhanced security measures, workers stumbled upon a hidden notebook at the juncture of the hallway ceiling and wall, a recent addition to the chilling collection. The initial page bore a solitary line: "They found my old lair, but not my new one." The handwriting matched the previous journal. The final page depicted a crude diagram of Sarah's apartment layout, a new passage marked in crimson, a accompanied by a date for that very night. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to discover her dwelling empty. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter, the television still murmuring in the background. In the bathroom, steam on the mirror unveiled a message etched by a finger. Look up. The ceiling panel above the shower had been displaced. The manhunt for Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction specialist skilled in renovations, remains ongoing. Thermal scans of Sarah's building revealed no lingering presence within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains unaccounted for, her case intertwined with similar vanishings across state lines. Authorities caution apartment managers about unauthorized alterations in concealed spaces. Yet the image that haunts Detective Morris most is not the graves or journals, but the unsuspecting residents captured in photographs. His mind echoes with the memory of Sarah, enveloped by the nightly footsteps above her, in an apartment devoid of an upper level. Sometimes in the solitude of his home, Detective Morris gazes upwards at his ceiling, listening, waiting, wondering who else may be listening too. Story 13. In the heart of a charming Victorian-era home, Michael and Sarah Klein embarked on a journey they never expected. What began as a simple renovation project soon spiraled into a mysterious tale that would unravel the very fabric of their reality. The old house whispered secrets hidden beneath layers of time and wallpaper. It all started with a water stain, a small imperfection in the master bedroom that beckoned them to peel back the layers of the past. As the floral wallpaper gave way to reveal a name Alina Winters scrawled in desperate ink, their curiosity ignited a flame that refused to be extinguished. Who was Alina Winters, and why did her name haunt the walls of their home? The more they searched, the deeper the mystery grew. A missing persons case from decades past intertwined with the present, blurring the lines between truth and fiction. Late nights were spent poring over old records, tracing the footsteps of those who came before them. Margaret Cavendish, the enigmatic woman who sold them the house, held the key to a puzzle that spanned generations. The resemblance between Margaret and the missing Alina sent shivers down their spines, connecting dots that led to dark revelations. As they delved deeper into the shadows of the past, they unearthed a hidden space beneath the floorboards, a secret chamber holding the remnants of identities long forgotten. Alina Winters and Margaret Cavendish, a tale of duality, of fractured personalities intertwined in a dance of deception. Forensics teams descended upon their home, turning it into a stage for a macabre performance of truth and lies. The walls, once silent witnesses, now screamed with the echoes of a past that refused to stay buried. DNA matched, fingerprints revealed, and a chilling discovery emerged from the depths of their existence. Rebecca Eldridge, a name whispered in hushed tones, emerged as the orchestrator of a sinister plot that spanned decades. Her descent into madness mirrored Alina's tragic fate, a story of obsession and betrayal that culminated in a web of deceit so intricate it threatened to consume them all. As the investigation unfolded, the boundaries between reality and illusion blurred, revealing a truth more chilling than fiction. Rebecca's fractured mind had woven a tapestry of lies, each thread leading back to the fateful moment when Alina's life was extinguished. The garden, once a sanctuary, now held the remains of a long-lost soul, unearthed by the relentless pursuit of justice. Alina Winters found peace in the embrace of the earth, her story finally told, her legacy etched in the walls that bore witness to her tragedy. For Michael and Sarah, the house became a monument to the past, a silent guardian of secrets long forgotten. their dreams of a peaceful abode shattered by the revelations that lurked within its walls. The house where truth and fiction collided, where the past bled into the present, leaving behind a legacy of mystery and intrigue. As they stood on the threshold of their once beloved home, now tainted by the ghosts of its past inhabitants, they knew that some stories were meant to be buried, their echoes fading into the night, whispering lullabies of a bygone era. And as sleep claimed them, the mysteries of the house intertwined with their dreams, weaving a tapestry of shadows that danced in the moonlight, beckoning them into a realm where reality and fantasy merged into one. Story 14. In the stillness of the night, a faint flicker danced across the baby monitor's screen, catching the mother's eye. At first, she brushed it off as a glitch, a mere blip in the digital realm. But then the crackle of static filled the room, and a soft voice, barely above a whisper, slipped through the air, saying, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A shiver ran down her spine, her pulse quickening as she listened, her instincts on high alert. With a racing heart, she hurried to her son's room, the dread of the unknown tightening its grip on her. Yet when she flung open the door, the crib lay empty, the moonlight casting eerie shadows across the room. The window stood closed, the door securely locked. The only anomaly in the room was a stuffed rabbit, its unblinking black eyes fixed on her. In a frenzy of panic and fear, she screamed until her voice grew hoarse, the sound of her anguish piercing through the night. The neighbors, startled by her cries, summoned help, and soon the authorities were on the scene. They found her on the nursery floor, clutching the stuffed rabbit, her world shattered by the inexplicable disappearance of her infant son, Samuel. The investigation that followed offered more questions than answers. There were no traces of forced entry, no signs of a break-in. The home security system had stood guard, undisturbed. The baby monitor footage, once a source of comfort, now held a chilling mystery with its whispered voice and static interruption. Suspicions turned towards the mother, Rebecca, with her history of seeking help for postpartum depression. Her composure during questioning unnerved the detectives, casting a shadow of doubt over her grief-stricken facade. Whispers of doubt and suspicion rippled through the community, casting a pall over the once tranquil neighborhood. Then a glimmer of hope emerged amidst the darkness. Tiny fibers, foreign to the household, were discovered on the nursery windowsill, a clue pointing to an intruder skilled in the art of stealth. The focus shifted, revealing a figure moving in the shadows on security footage from neighboring homes, leaving behind a footprint that hinted at military or climbing expertise. As the spotlight shifted, Daniel, the absent husband, returned to a storm of accusations and doubts. His newfound hobby of rock climbing, his unusual calluses, and a significant life insurance policy on Samuel raised eyebrows. Phone records unveiled cryptic calls and a hidden second life, hidden from Rebecca's knowledge. The threads of deception unraveled further as digital forensics uncovered a sinister plot. The baby monitor had been hacked, manipulated to deceive and mislead. The voice that had whispered in the night had not come from inside the nursery, but had been a twisted ploy orchestrated from afar. A breakthrough came in a nondescript basement, where Samuel was found in the care of a woman named Elaine, a haunting connection to Daniel's past. Elaine, fueled by loss and longing, had orchestrated a plan with Daniel, a plan that shattered lives and innocence. In the courtroom, the truth echoed through the silence as the baby monitor's audio played, revealing secrets and betrayals. Daniel's cough, a damning detail in the background, sealed his fate alongside Elaine's. Justice was served, but scars remained, lingering reminders of a night veiled in shadows. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far from the whispers of the past. The baby monitor, a silent witness to the truth, lay dormant, a relic of a dark chapter. And as the night embraced them in its soothing embrace, they found peace in the stillness, knowing that the shadows could never reach them again. Story 15. In a small, unassuming coffee shop nestled on a quiet street corner, a man had made it his daily ritual to sit at the same table, order the same black coffee with no sugar, and immerse himself in the world of silence. The barista recognized his face, the regular customer who preferred solitude, yet no one knew his name. Days turned into months, and then one day he didn't show up. The absence of the man caught the attention of the staff, and when the police were called to check on his usual spot, they stumbled upon a wallet left behind. Inside the wallet was a driver's license featuring a photo of the man, but to their bewilderment there was no name, no address, just a vacant space where his identity should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer took charge of the mysterious case, her fingertips lightly grazing the cold metal table as she delved into the enigma of the man who had vanished without a trace. Replaying the security footage repeatedly, she observed the stranger, now only known as John Doe in their records, appearing mundane and unremarkable. His unassuming presence made his sudden disappearance all the more perplexing. The footage showed John entering the coffee shop during the bustling morning hours, following his usual routine of ordering his black coffee and settling at the secluded corner table. With meticulous movements, he retrieved a notebook from his worn leather messenger bag and began to jot down inscrutable lines. Sipping his coffee intermittently, he gazed out the window, lost in contemplation. Then came the pivotal moment captured on camera. John placed his wallet on the table, stood up, and headed towards the restroom area. But that was the last time he was seen. He never returned to his table, never emerged through any exit. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. As Detective Mercer delved deeper into the investigation, she scrutinized the contents of the abandoned wallet spread across her desk. The driver's license bore the same face as the man in the footage, yet the personal details were conspicuously absent. Blank spaces filled the information fields, leaving a void where his identity should have been. Among the wallet's contents were credit cards with nonsensical numbers unlinked to any accounts, meticulously organized cash, a recent coffee shop receipt, and a solitary business card bearing only a faintly printed phone number. When Mercer dialed the number, silence greeted her, punctuated by the rustling of paper before the line disconnected abruptly. The barista who had served John for years could offer little insight into the mysterious man. He kept to himself, always engrossed in his writing, polite, tipped generously. Maybe had an accent, but he spoke so softly it was hard to discern, the barista recalled, her voice tinged with a hint of nostalgia. The notebook left behind by John revealed a cryptic array of coded text and intricate sketches of architectural designs unfamiliar to the area. Cryptographers struggled to decipher its contents, while Mercer dispatched officers to scour the neighborhood with John Doe's image, yielding no leads or identifications. A peculiar detail caught Mercer's attention in the security footage, a flickering time stamp whenever John entered the coffee shop. Despite the tech specialist dismissing it as a glitch, Mercer sensed there was more to the anomaly. Returning to the coffee shop, she positioned herself at John's favored table, her gaze drawn to an antique mirror suspended between the entrance and the restroom hallway. Intrigued by the mirror's ornate carvings mirroring symbols in John's notebook, Mercer probed the shop owner about its origins. The mirror, a relic predating the shop itself, had never been moved or tampered with, bearing witness to decades of clandestine occurrences. Upon closer inspection, Mercer detected a subtle distortion in her reflection, a warmth emanating from the mirror's surface instead of the expected chill. Summoning the forensics team, they uncovered a concealed compartment behind the mirror housing a trove of identical wallets, each containing a faceless driver's license and a leather-bound journal inscribed with entries spanning generations. Among the journal entries, references to temporal displacement and identity transference surfaced, hinting at experiments beyond conventional comprehension. Mentions of crossing back and window points alluded to a realm where realities intertwined, converging at the coffee shop, a nexus of inexplicable phenomena. As the investigation unfolded, peculiar incidents unfurled around the coffee shop, with customers reporting eerie reflections and phantom sightings of John Doe. The veil between dimensions seemed to waver, blurring the boundaries of what was perceived as reality. A breakthrough emerged when an elderly woman, Margaret Keller, a former physicist with classified government affiliations, shed light on John Doe's true identity. Daniel Weston, a brilliant scientist consumed by the pursuit of quantum mirrors and parallel realities. Weston, presumed dead after a laboratory mishap, had theorized about the existence of multiple realities coalescing at specific locations, such as the coffee shop, an unwitting convergence point bridging worlds. Keller's revelations intertwined with Weston's research, illuminating the intricate tapestry of his inexplicable disappearance. Returning to the coffee shop, Mercer unearthed the historical ties linking Weston's experimentations to the very foundation of the building, an erstwhile research facility where quantum anomalies once thrived. The shop stood atop a buried legacy, a monument to Weston's enigmatic legacy. In a pivotal moment of revelation, Mercer, scrutinizing the security footage in solitude, discerned a spectral apparition reflected in the shattered mirror, a duality of Daniel Weston observing his temporal self. Two facets of the same enigma coalesced in a fleeting instant, marking the culmination of an otherworldly experiment. The shattered mirror bore witness to the closure of a chapter, as a final message scrawled in Weston's hand foretold the end of the experiment, the sealing of the window between realities. The man who straddled worlds, existing in ephemeral juxtaposition, vanished into the annals of mystery, leaving behind a legacy etched in the whispers of the wind. The case of the man who defied existence remained shrouded in ambiguity, the coffee shop's doors closing as a testament to the enigma that once dwelled within its walls. Daniel Weston's fate remained a haunting enigma, his essence entwined with the fabric of the unknown. Detective Mercer's pursuit of truth led her down a labyrinthine path, culminating in her own metamorphosis, a recluse haunted by echoes of Weston's legacy. Her solitary vigil, inscribed in a replica of Weston's notebook, bore testament to the lingering presence of a man who traversed realms beyond mortal ken. And in the quiet of the night, when shadows danced upon the walls, fragments of an antique mirror whispered of forgotten gateways, of windows into the unknown, beckoning to those who dared to seek the truth hidden within the veils of time and space. Story 16: The Enigmatic Intruder. She cleared the mist from the mirror, gazing at her reflection. Everything seemed normal, yet a subtle disquiet lingered. A flicker caught her eye, a movement unbidden. When she turned away, her reflection remained fixed, watching her. Thus began the peculiar ordeal of Rebecca Thorne, a solitary dweller in a modest apartment nestled in a serene suburb. Known for her meticulous ways, she led a solitary existence, interacting politely with her neighbors while keeping to herself. A data analyst by profession, her days unfolded with precision and routine, devoid of any hint of the enigma that would envelop her life. It all started innocuously. Objects in her abode shifted inexplicably small displacements that went unnoticed by most. A mug placed on a different shelf, books rearranged, her toothbrush out of place. She brushed off these anomalies as consequences of her taxing work hours, staring at screens until reality blurred. Detective Marion Shaw's interest was piqued when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disturbances, finally reached out to the authorities. At first glance, the situation appeared more suited for mental health services than police intervention. No tangible evidence of crime, just a woman plagued by a pervasive sense of unease within her own home. The pivotal moment arrived with the bathroom mirror incident. During her subsequent meeting with the police, Rebecca recounted the eerie episode in vivid detail. Her reflection had seemed to move independently, casting a spectral gaze upon her. To corroborate her claim, she presented security footage from a camera trained on her front door, revealing a chilling revelation. The grainy video captured Rebecca's departure for work in the morning, followed by an exact replica of her entering the apartment 20 minutes later. Forensic scrutiny of the footage unveiled no signs of tampering, no digital deceit. The doppelganger moved with eerie accuracy, clad in Rebecca's attire, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. Yet concurrent time-stamped footage placed Rebecca miles away, already at her workplace. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has mastered Miss Thorne's every mannerism and appearance with unsettling precision." The investigation deepened. Fingerprints within the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, devoid of foreign DNA traces. Neighbors reported nothing amiss, only Rebecca's regular comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, recalled a peculiar encounter where Rebecca failed to acknowledge her greeting upon returning home, an incident she found peculiar but not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the anomalies in a journal. Minor disruptions burgeoned. Food vanished from her fridge. Unexplained searches surfaced on her computer. Most unsettling were the self-portraits on her phone, images of her with an eerie semblance but taken without her consent. Some snapshots depicted a subtly distorted visage, a smile too wide, eyes too intense. "I fear I'm losing my mind," she confided to Detective Shaw during their subsequent meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating my descent into madness." Breakthrough dawned as a pattern emerged in the security footage. The doppelganger materialized only during Rebecca's scheduled departures for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday grocery runs, predetermined activities with foreseeable durations. "An intricate familiarity with your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't happenstance, it's a targeted surveillance, a calculated infiltration." A forensic psychologist theorized a fixation angle, a fixation on becoming Rebecca, inhabiting her life, possibly supplanting her entirely. Such fixations, though rare, found precedence in psychological studies. The perpetrator, typically undergoing a mental rupture, fixated on a victim symbolizing coveted traits, stability, beauty, success. The inquiry honed in on Lily Winters, a former colleague of Rebecca's. Dismissed due to escalating erratic behavior, Lily had shared proximity with Rebecca, often remarking on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she inundated Rebecca with unsettling emails, hinting at an eerie kinship. A search warrant led detectives to Lily's residence, unraveling a nightmarish tableau. One chamber mirrored Rebecca's bedroom with eerie precision walls adorned with clandestine snapshots of Rebecca, living her life unawares. A closet harbored replicas of Rebecca's attire, alongside meticulous notes on her habits, speech patterns, and idiosyncrasies. Most unsettling were the practice videos Lily mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions. The evolution was palpable, a clumsy replication metamorphosing into an almost flawless emulation. "She aspired to become me," Rebecca murmured upon confronting the evidence. "Not merely mimicry, but erasure." Sophisticated tools for key replication and electronic card duplication surfaced in Lily's abode, alongside an intricate tracking system of Rebecca's movements. Lily's ultimate motives remained shrouded. Journals discovered in her dwelling oscillated between reality and fiction, occasionally referring to Rebecca in the first and third person within the same breath. The last journal entry sent shivers down spines. "Soon, only one of us will remain. The stronger shall endure." As authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she vanished, leaving behind a hasty evacuation, a stark indicator of her brazen intentions. A nationwide alert was issued, and Rebecca was ushered into protective seclusion, vigilantly monitored. For weeks, every site linked to Rebecca's prior existence underwent surveillance. Lily remained elusive. The saga culminated in a chilling twist when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported a perplexing occurrence. Rebecca, though under protective custody, had been sighted entering the edifice. Video evidence corroborated the sighting, an exact replica of Rebecca wielding a valid ID, delving into her former workspace before exiting. The unsettling realization dawned: Lily hadn't fled. She had assumed Rebecca's identity, usurping her life while the real Rebecca remained concealed. The case lingered unresolved. Lily Winters persisted at large, and Rebecca Thorne etched a new persona in a clandestine refuge. Detective Shaw preserved a photograph on her desk, two visages eerily akin. One bore Rebecca Thorne's semblance, the other Lily Winters. She scrutinized them, seeking nuances, searching for the telltale signs that set them apart. The true horror, Shaw imparted to fledgling detectives, isn't resembling another or sounding akin. It's yearning to embody someone so fervently that one forsakes their essence in the pursuit. Identity isn't just outward display, it's a sanctum we safeguard zealously. And at times, it's only when threatened that we grasp its sanctity. Story 17. The apartment had sat in silence for months, a void waiting to be filled. When the new tenants arrived, their expectations were low, perhaps only dust, remnants of a past life left behind. Yet there was one door that refused to yield, a closet stubbornly locked from the inside. The landlord, with furrowed brow, finally broke the barrier, anticipating forgotten belongings or discarded items. What they discovered, however, sent a shiver down their spines. The walls bore witness to a desperate struggle, etched with deep, jagged scratches in the wood. And nestled in the corner, an ancient flip phone, its screen still aglow with a single, unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator, had encountered her share of chilling scenes. But this one, devoid of blood or violence, stirred a sense of unease within her. Those marks spoke of confinement, of a battle for freedom. Summon forensics immediately, she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured each scratch with his camera, and gather all records of the previous tenants. The message on the phone simply stated, "I know what you did." The landlord, a jittery man with perpetually damp palms, recounted how the previous tenant had vanished suddenly, leaving rent unpaid. A quiet young woman kept to herself, Left about 6 months back, he murmured, avoiding the closet's gaze. No trouble, no complaints. Forensic analysis unveiled a haunting truth within those scratches, traces of blood, most belonging to a single person identified as Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman reported missing. Yet there were 2 additional DNA samples. One remained a mystery, the other linked to a man supposedly deceased for 2 years. This defies logic, Shaw muttered as she pored over the lab results. Derek Mercer, declared dead in a past tragedy, now left his genetic mark in Emma's closet. Emma's living space painted a picture of interruption. Unopened mail, a forgotten coffee mug, a neatly arranged bed. Phone records hinted at a sudden halt in communication with her sister and a flurry of calls from an unknown number prior to her disappearance. The sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed shared. No name, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured Emma entering her building one night, trailed by a shadowy figure in a baseball cap, eluding the cameras. The puzzle pieces began to align when partial fingerprints belonging to Derek Mercer were discovered on the closet's interior doorknob. He staged his death, Shaw concluded. But why, and what's his tie to Emma? The unidentified DNA sample led them to another missing woman, Lynette Porter, vanished 3 years earlier. Her description matched a visitor seen at Emma's apartment, linking Mercer to a web of deceit. Traffic cameras revealed Mercer's mother's car frequenting the area, with a figure resembling Derek spotted near Emma's building. The trail led to a remote property owned by Mercer's kin, where behind forbidding doors they unearthed Lynette Porter emaciated, imprisoned in conditions mirroring Emma's ordeal. "He forced me to witness," she whispered, haunted eyes gazing into emptiness. "Learn the fate of those who dare escape." Evidence mounted against Mercer, journals detailing his obsession with dominance, photographs of his victims, and damning videos of Emma's captivity. "She thought she could expose me," his voice echoed in the recordings. "No one reveals my truths." The hunt for Derek Mercer spanned jurisdictions, his capture revealing a chilling profile crafted by forensic psychologists. Mercer's desire was not merely to end lives, but to prolong suffering in confined spaces. Upon his arrest, a seaside destination awaited him, alongside tools of captivity in his possession. During interrogation, Mercer remained composed, asserting Emma had sent the incriminating message herself, a futile cry for help. The trial unveiled Mercer's elaborate ruse to evade justice, preying on women resembling his initial victim. Emma's fate remained a mystery, her final act a message to haunt her killer. The jury swiftly found Mercer guilty on all counts, his demeanor betraying a twisted satisfaction as he received a life sentence. Lynette Porter, now free from the shadows, addressed the court with resolve. "He dwells in darkness, but I shall bask in the light." The case reshaped missing persons investigations, emphasizing relational patterns and property scrutiny. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment, a symbol of survival amidst darkness, a testament to resilience in the face of unspeakable horrors. Story 18, the worn-down hotel stood silent, a relic of forgotten times where guests passed through like shadows in the night. With a peculiar glance, the clerk handed her the key, his words barely a whisper, just, "Avoid the last door on the left." Intrigue tugged at her, stirring a curiosity she couldn't resist. That evening, navigating the dimly illuminated corridor, she halted before the ominous door. The handle sent shivers down her spine, icy to the touch. To her eyes, it appeared no different from its companions until she pressed her ear against it. A faint breath, a presence from the other side, sent a chill through her. Detective Morgan Reed, weary-eyed, slipped under the yellow tape marking the crime scene entrance. The scent of iron and decay pervaded the air, a scent she knew too well. Blood had seeped into the threadbare carpet, transforming its once faded hues into a deep, somber shade. In this room of contradictions, a spotless bathroom, an untouched bed, and the grim sight in between lay the lifeless form of a young woman. Her golden locks splayed around her like a halo, her vacant gaze fixed on the ceiling, frozen in a silent scream. Reed knelt beside the victim, respecting the evidence markers that punctuated the scene. The third one this season, the forensic expert remarked clinically, capturing the scene with his camera. Same pattern as before, Reed nodded knowingly. The victim, adorned in elegant attire, seemed out of place in this neglected motel. A designer bag lay open, contents undisturbed. This was not a crime of theft, but of something deeper, more sinister. The hotel manager lingered anxiously at the threshold, his complexion drained. She checked in alone, paid in cash. I never imagined, his voice faltered. The maid found her during the cleaning. Reed surveyed the room once more. No signs of forced entry, no struggle evident on the victim's form. She had either welcomed her assailant willingly or recognized them. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned photos to the board, 3 women, each bearing a striking resemblance, each discovered in nondescript motels. Speculation buzzed in the media about a serial predator on the loose. The autopsy report is in, Detective Hayes announced, dropping a file on Reed's desk. Death by strangulation manual, no trace of DNA under the nails, no signs of assault. Reed furrowed her brow. This was personal, a vendetta beyond mere predation. Days melded into nights as the investigation deepened. Footage from the hotel's cameras yielded no leads. The victim, identified as Elaine Werner, a meticulous financial analyst, had no known adversaries. Friends described her as cautious, detail-oriented, unlikely to choose such lodgings willingly. A breakthrough emerged during Reed's talk with Werner's sister. She mentioned a man from her workplace, the sister recounted, hands trembling around her cup. It was secretive, complicated. I think he was married. Leaner in, Reed inquired, did she ever mention a name? Just see, the sister replied. The focus shifted to Werner's office. Colleagues painted a picture of a professional, private woman. Yet tucked in her desk calendar, a business card revealed a connection: Charles Emerson, Senior VP. Emerson exuded charm and composure when questioned, his alibi airtight, an evening with his spouse and friends, but a flicker in his gaze unsettled Reed. Did you have a relationship with Elaine Werner outside work? She probed casually. A fleeting expression crossed Emerson's features, barely perceptible. Only professionally. Forensic analysis later linked partial prints from Werner's bag to Emerson. Confronted, he confessed, we were involved, but it ended. She threatened my marriage. Enough to end a life, Reed pressed. Emerson's fa-de cracked. I never set foot in that motel. Yet records told a different tale, a credit charge for the adjacent room paid with his corporate card. Inside, a concealed camera captured damning evidence. Fibers from his suit matched those on Werner's body. His DNA lingered on a glass in her room. His computer held recordings of prior victims, revealing a chilling pattern. In the interrogation room, Emerson's veneer crumbled. They would ruin everything, he muttered. My status, my marriage, my life. The trial unfolded swiftly, a spectacle of justice observed by 3 grieving families. Emerson's stoic demeanor remained unyielding, devoid of remorse. Life imprisonment awaited him, his mask slipping only for a fleeting instant when Reed met his gaze, a void where empathy should reside. The media dubbed it the door on the left case. Psychologists dissected Emerson's psyche, while true crime aficionados delved into every detail. For Reed, the case lingered, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurks behind closed doors. In the evidence vault, 3 identical keys rest, artifacts of a chilling chapter that can never be erased. Story 19. Renovations always bring to light mysterious remnants of the past, a glimpse into lives long forgotten. Old newspapers crumpled with time, broken trinkets whispering stories of bygone days, and faded photographs capturing moments lost to memory. Sarah and Michael, drawn to the charm of a Victorian-era home, embarked on a renovation journey that would unravel more than they could have ever imagined. Beneath the worn floorboards of their new abode, nestled like a secret waiting to be revealed, lay a letter carefully folded within the shadows of the wood. The paper, fragile with age, bore a cryptic message that sent shivers down their spines. "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before they could comprehend the weight of those words, 3 sharp raps pierced the silence of the empty house, echoing with a haunting presence. Detective Alina Reed, with her seasoned eyes and steady hands, delved into the enigma that had woven itself into the very foundation of the home. The couple's unease was palpable as they recounted the chilling moment of the mysterious knocking. Background checks on Sarah and Michael painted a picture of normalcy newlyweds with no shadows lurking in their past. The house, however, held a history veiled in shadows. Once belonging to the Hargrove family, its halls whispered tales of bygone eras and silent secrets. The late Margaret Hargrove, the last resident, had left behind a legacy shrouded in mystery after her passing. Despite a seemingly ordinary life, there was an undercurrent of something amiss, a puzzle waiting to be solved. As Detective Reed unearthed the past, a tale of debts and deception began to unravel. Franklin Hargrove, a man haunted by his own demons, had crossed paths with a figure from the shadows, a collector known as Victor Mercer. Franklin's descent into the clutches of gambling debts had set off a chain of events that led to a dark revelation buried beneath the floorboards. Margaret's silent fears and whispered confessions, hidden within the pages of her diaries, painted a portrait of a woman trapped in a web of secrets and lies. The truth, long buried in the depths of the house, emerged with bone-chilling clarity. Mercer's fate, a grim reminder of justice delayed but not denied, brought closure to a chapter of darkness that had lingered for 2 decades. The house, now a silent witness to the shadows of its past, stood abandoned as Sarah and Michael chose to part ways with its haunted history. Local whispers spoke of spectral echoes in the night, a ghostly reminder of the secrets that lay dormant within its walls. The note, a poignant artifact of a bygone era, remained a chilling testament to the warning that had gone unheeded. In the quiet stillness of the vacant house, where time and memory intertwined, the legacy of those who came before lingered like a whispered promise. Detective Reed, in her final reflections, pondered the mysteries that endure beyond the confines of logic and reason. Some truths, she mused, are destined to remain shrouded in the mists of the unknown, haunting the corridors of our imagination with their enigmatic presence. Story 20. The quiet hours of the night, a mysterious call echoed through the darkness, a mere pocket dial filled with static and muffled whispers. The operator's interest was piqued when a voice emerged from the chaos, a woman's voice urgent and trembling. "He's here," and then a heavy silence descended. The call originated from an empty house, a relic of the past left untouched for years, its secrets buried in the shadows. There were no signs of intrusion, no disturbances in the stillness of the abandoned rooms. But in the dimly lit kitchen, a phone rested on the countertop, its screen glowing faintly, a beacon in the obscurity. Detective Morgan Reed found herself drawn to the enigma of the call, playing back the recording repeatedly, each time feeling a chill run down her spine. The whispered words lingered in the air, desperation, fear, and an unsettling impossibility. The house had once belonged to the Sullivans, a family torn apart by a tragic fire that had ravaged their home years ago. Since then, the house had stood empty, a silent witness to the passage of time. The caretaker swore no one had set foot inside, yet the phone's call contradicted that assurance. "Can we trace the number?" Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The revelation that the number belonged to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter of the family, only deepened the mystery. Catherine had perished in a car accident 3 years prior, her presence now a spectral whisper in the abandoned house. The evidence confounded logic, a phone that shouldn't be making calls from a house that shouldn't hold secrets. The dust around the phone bore the only traces of disturbance, as if the device had materialized out of thin air. Forensic analysis yielded no tangible leads, no fingerprints to follow, no footprints to track. The doors remained sealed, the windows unbroken, shrouded in a veil of perplexity. The heart of the investigation became those 11 seconds of the call, an echo from beyond, a spectral voice reaching out from the void. Voice analysis confirmed the identity of the caller as Catherine Sullivan, her words a haunting echo of the past. The timestamp revealed a chilling truth: the call had occurred at the precise moment of Catherine's demise, a ghostly connection transcending time. Morgan and Walsh delved deeper, unraveling the threads of Catherine's life. Her father, now remarried, seemed bewildered by the unearthed secrets. Her mother, a solitary figure in a small apartment, crumbled at the sound of her daughter's voice, a spectral lament from the beyond. Mark Jennings, Catherine's former boyfriend, stood at the center of the storm, his alibi a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness. But it was a discovery in Catherine's old journal that shattered the fragile peace, a chronicle of love turned to fear, of control and isolation, a descent into a nightmare. The final entry bore a chilling prophecy, a plea for justice from beyond the grave. Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of evidence, his denials ringing hollow in the face of Catherine's unwavering truth. As the investigation unearthed long-buried secrets, a grim revelation came to light: a second phone, buried in the earth, a silent witness to a tragedy. Deleted texts whispered of betrayal and treachery, of a life cut short by a malevolent hand. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, painting a portrait of a man consumed by darkness, a predator hiding in plain sight. When the truth was laid bare, Mark's elaborate facade crumbled, revealing the depths of his depravity. A manhunt ensued, culminating in a chilling confrontation at the Sullivan house, where justice awaited its reckoning. Mark's whispered confessions echoed through the empty rooms, a hollow plea for absolution. In the hushed confines of the courtroom, the jury's verdict rang out a sentence of guilt, a verdict of justice served. Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her chest, a bittersweet solace in the face of tragedy. The phone from the abandoned house remained a silent sentinel, a relic of the past that whispered of a life taken too soon. And so the echoes of Catherine's voice lingered in the stillness, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even in death, the silence will find a way to speak. The phone in the evidence locker remained a silent witness, its story etched in the annals of time, a tale of darkness and light, of justice and redemption, a spectral whisper in the night. Story 21. The tale of the new homeowners began with a peculiar occurrence: the crackling of the old intercom system in the dead of night. A relic of bygone days, rewired but left in oblivion. The husband, plagued by curiosity, finally pressed the button one fateful night. A whisper, like a ghostly echo, crackled through the ancient speaker. "Why did you come back?" His hands trembled as he recoiled in shock. His wife, standing behind him, denied speaking those words. The Victorian manor, nestled amidst ancient oak trees, exuded an enigmatic charm with its weathered facade concealing a modern interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, enamored with history, had acquired the property at an unexpectedly affordable price, despite the real estate agent's uneasy demeanor during the initial tour. The vintage intercom system, linking all the rooms, had captivated the Parkers' fascination with the past. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor, the gravel crunching under her unmarked vehicle's tires. The call had hinted at a possible break-in, but an underlying unease in the dispatcher's voice hinted at a deeper mystery. Daniel Parker, his pallor unsettling under the dim porch light, welcomed Detective Reeves inside. It all started with the intercom, he began, leading her through the grand foyer. Static whispers, then coherent sentences. My wife thought I was imagining it until she heard it too. In the living room, Meredith sat rigid on an antique sofa, her grip on a steaming mug unyielding. We uncovered something behind the wall, she revealed abruptly. Daniel wanted to expand the kitchen pantry, and behind the drywall her voice faltered. Hidden behind the wall, encased in decaying plastic, was a small leather-bound journal. Detective Reeves, donning gloves, gingerly turned the brittle pages. The elegant yet frantic script belonged to Alina, the apparent previous owner, detailing her fears of her husband Vincent's malevolent intentions. The final entry, 30 years old, marked the end of Alina's chronicle. The previous owners had acquired the house from an elderly man who had relocated to a retirement community. Vincent and Alina Blackwood's dark history unfurled as the investigation progressed. Property records confirmed their ownership, with Vincent selling the house after Alina's sudden disappearance. No divorce proceedings, no change of address, no financial activity in Alina's name post her final journal entry. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled anomalies beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation. As the concrete crumbled, human remains emerged, a woman in her 40s bearing signs of blunt force trauma. A wedding band inscribed to Alina, "My eternal love," was among the remains. Vincent Blackwood, now aged and confined to a care facility, confessed to the crime when confronted with the evidence. His chilling admission revealed a carefully constructed narrative of Alina abandoning him, sustained by forged postcards and decades of deceit. The trial swiftly concluded with Vincent pleading guilty to murder. The judge acknowledged the meticulous planning and prolonged deception, condemning Vincent's actions. Daniel and Meredith, unable to endure the house's dark past, sold the property after a solemn memorial for Alina in the restored garden. The intercom, a bearer of secrets, was removed by the subsequent owners during renovations. Detective Reeves revisited the Blackwood case file before its archival, pondering how the house had unraveled its enigma across time. The justice system had finally confronted Vincent Blackwood, thanks to Alina's resolute voice from beyond. Local law enforcement dubbed the case the house that answered back. Detective Reeves on occasion drove past the property on her way home. She never halted but slowed down, the window partly open, attuned to whispers carried by the wind. Story 22, The Discovery. In the quiet depths of the attic, hidden beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, with eyes of a deep, unblinking blue. Sarah and Michael, the young couple who had purchased the Victorian house at auction, were taken aback by its unexpected presence. They chuckled nervously, dismissing it as just another piece of forgotten history. That night, a subtle unease lingered in the air as they retired to bed. The stillness seemed to stretch endlessly, wrapping around them like a heavy cloak. And come morning, the doll was no longer nestled in the attic shadows. It had silently moved to perch at the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel in the dim light. Detective Rachel Winters, a keen investigator with a sharp mind, was called to the scene on a crisp autumn morning. Inside the master bedroom lay a female victim, her form arranged in a chillingly unnatural pose, eyes wide with a frozen terror. In the hallway, the male victim appeared as if caught in a desperate attempt to flee an unseen horror. With meticulous care, Detective Winters observed the scene, noting the deliberate arrangement of the bodies, as if they were mere dolls in a macabre display. The absence of any signs of struggle or forced entry only deepened the mystery shrouding the tragedy. As the investigation unfolded, whispers of strange occurrences within the house began to surface. Neighbors spoke of shadows moving behind curtains where no one should be, and ghostly laughter echoing through the empty halls in the dead of night. Each tale added a layer of disquiet to the already perplexing case. Forensic experts combed through the house, uncovering traces of antique fabrics and the absence of any foreign DNA or prints. It was as if the perpetrator had left no tangible mark, existing only as a phantom presence lingering in the shadows. Delving into the history of the property revealed a chilling pattern of unexplained deaths spanning decades. 3 previous owners had met mysterious ends, each case shrouded in eerie inconsistencies and whispers of the supernatural. A connection began to emerge, one that led back to a renowned doll maker who once called the house his home. The dollmaker's tragic past, marked by the untimely death of his daughter under suspicious circumstances, cast a haunting shadow over the investigation. Rumors of his unorthodox methods and the whispered secrets of binding spirits to his creations painted a picture of dark arts woven into the very fabric of the house. As Detective Winters delved deeper, she unearthed a series of old photographs hidden beneath the attic floorboards. Among them, a chilling image stood out, a doll, eerily identical to the one discovered by Sarah and Michael, appearing to shift positions between each frame as if possessed of a life of its own. Infrared scans of the walls revealed ghostly handprints trailing from the attic to the master bedroom, along with a mysterious residue that defied classification. The truth seemed to elude them, slipping through their grasp like mist. A chance encounter with a distant relative of the dollmaker unveiled dark family secrets, hinting at rituals that transcended the boundaries of the living world. The line between reality and nightmare blurred as whispers of animated dolls and bound spirits danced on the edges of perception. Despite her best efforts, Detective Winters found herself at a crossroads, faced with a case that defied logic and reason. The doll remained at large, its presence a lingering specter haunting the edges of her consciousness. In a final act of defiance, Detective Winters chose to keep the doll as evidence, locking it away in a secure cabinet at the station. But the morning after, the doll vanished, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a sense of unease that lingered in the air. The house, tainted by its dark legacy, changed hands once more, its troubled past casting a shadow over its grandeur. The new owners, wary of the whispers that clung to its walls, discovered the attic empty save for a solitary blanket, a silent witness to the mysteries that lay buried within. And so the tale of Sarah and Michael, of Detective Winters and the haunted doll, faded into the annals of unsolved mysteries, a whispered legend that echoed through the corridors of time. The truth remained elusive, a ghostly presence that refused to be laid to rest. As the years passed, the house stood silent and still, its secrets locked away in the attic, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to seek the truth. And on quiet nights, when the world slumbered and the shadows danced, a faint laughter would drift on the wind, a reminder of the darkness that lurked within the heart of the old Victorian house. Story 23 appeared in the post, wrapped in a simple envelope with no sender's details. A lone brass key weathered by time. The homeowner couldn't place it, but there was a strange sense of familiarity about it. Trying it in every lock she owned, no door budged. It didn't belong to her. Yet when she set it on the coffee table, the antique grandfather clock in the hallway let out a solitary, eerie chime despite being silent for years. Sarah Miller alerted the authorities after stumbling upon the enigmatic key. What seemed like a peculiar coincidence swiftly unraveled into one of the most unsettling criminal inquiries the serene suburban area had ever witnessed. Initially, the responding officer brushed off her worries. A key in the mail, probably a mix-up, he conjectured. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Reluctantly, the officer took the key as evidence, mostly to pacify her, sealing it in a small evidence bag that would later become pivotal in a sprawling investigation. Detective Robert Harmon received the case dossier during the morning briefing. A seasoned investigator with a special victims unit, he possessed a knack for sensing cases that would spiral beyond their seemingly innocuous beginnings. The brass key sat on his desk, unassuming yet oddly disquieting. Background checks on Sarah revealed no criminal past. A retired high school English teacher, widowed with grown children living far away. Nothing dubious in her financial records, phone logs, or social media. She seemed just as she claimed, an unwitting recipient of something unusual. The forensic team found only Sarah's fingerprints on the key. The envelope yielded nothing but a standard postmark from the regional distribution center. No DNA, no trace evidence. The key itself was a common Schlage, well used and likely several years old. The breakthrough arrived unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to run the key's unique bidding pattern through the department database. A cold case from 7 years prior had documented an identical key pattern linked to a storage unit where investigators discovered blood-stained carpet, cutting tools, and photos of unidentified women. The original investigation had hit a dead end due to insufficient evidence to pinpoint a suspect. Harmon delved into the dusty case files. The retired detective who had handled the case was long gone. The storage unit had been rented under a false identity, paid in cash. Surveillance footage had been overwritten. The evidence collected had produced partial DNA samples, but no matches in any criminal database. The photos retrieved from the storage unit depicted 5 different women, all appearing unconscious. Only 3 had been identified during the initial investigation, all reported missing but never found. Their cases remained open, classified as suspected homicides with no bodies recovered. Sarah didn't recognize any of the women in the photos. As the investigation progressed, she grew increasingly uneasy, fortifying her home with new locks and a security system. The lingering question, why send her this key? Harmon ordered a fresh analysis of the original evidence using newer methods. The partial DNA sample was expanded and cross-referenced through genealogical databases, resulting in a distant familial match, a second cousin twice removed from the suspect. Tracing back through family trees, investigators honed in on Harold Jenkins, who had resided just 2 streets away from Sarah until moving 6 years ago. His current whereabouts were a mystery. Further probing unveiled that Jenkins had been a substitute teacher at the same school where Sarah taught, though their interactions were scantily documented. His work history was sporadic, marked by unexplained gaps and frequent relocations. Nothing unusual turned up at his former residence upon inspection. Neighbors described him as unassuming, keeping to himself a common narrative that often follows revelations about predators concealed in plain sight. The burning question remained unanswered. Why send the key now? Why to Sarah Miller? Harmon posited it could be a trophy, a warning, or perhaps a grim invitation. The hunt for Jenkins escalated. His driver's license had lapsed, no credit card activity, no tax filings. The digital traces people usually leave behind were conspicuously absent, hinting at a deliberate effort to remain untraceable. The true horror of the case unfurled when authorities probed a small cabin registered to Jenkins' late mother. Beneath the worn wooden floorboards, investigators stumbled upon a hidden chamber accessible only through a trapdoor. Inside, meticulously arranged shelves held dozens of identical brass keys, each tagged with a name and date. 5 keys matched the women from the photos. The remaining keys, 27 in total, hinted at additional victims previously unknown to law enforcement. Buried behind the cabin, forensic teams unearthed human remains. The excavation spanned weeks as investigators revealed multiple bodies in varying stages of decay. Sarah was under constant protection as the manhunt for Jenkins expanded nationwide. Behavioral analysts speculated that the key symbolized a twisted invitation, Jenkins selecting Sarah as an admirer of his art. Dubbed the Keymaster by the media, his name spread like wildfire in national headlines. Fear gripped the community as residents questioned how such horror could lurk among them undetected. Tracking dogs trailed a scent from the cabin into the surrounding wilderness. Search teams combed dense forests. Thermal drones scanned inaccessible terrains. The manhunt burgeoned into one of the largest in the region's history. A wildlife photographer exploring remote woods snapped a picture of an individual resembling Jenkins. The blurry image captured a bearded man with hollow eyes carrying a backpack, venturing deeper into the wild. Authorities zeroed in on the area, establishing a perimeter. Tactical units navigated challenging landscapes as behavioral experts predicted Jenkins wouldn't surrender, likely having prepared with hidden supplies and escape routes. The climax unfolded when a patrol officer encountered Jenkins trying to cross a river. Instead of yielding, Jenkins retreated to higher ground, barricading himself in an abandoned fire observation tower. Negotiators attempted communication for hours to no avail. When tactical teams breached the tower, they found Jenkins lifeless from a self-inflicted wound. Beside him lay a journal detailing his crimes, alongside a brass key identical to the one Sarah had received. Within a waterproof container, investigators unearthed more evidence, including photos, maps marking burial sites, and personal effects seized from victims, a meticulously preserved chronicle of atrocities spanning nearly a decade. The final entry in the journal addressed Sarah directly. "You never noticed me, but I noticed everything about you. The key opens nothing because what I wanted to give you cannot be unlocked with metal, only with recognition. Now everyone will remember my name." The subsequent inquiry identified 32 victims in total. Families who had long wondered about missing loved ones finally received closure, albeit with the heavy burden of confirmed tragedy. Sarah never returned to her home, unable to reconcile the horror that had brushed so close to her ordinary life. The grandfather clock that had eerily chimed was scrutinized, revealing a discreet wireless receiver Jenkins had been observing, waiting for the moment she received his gift. The case stands as a chilling example of predatory behavior lurking behind seemingly normal facades. Psychologists continue to dissect Jenkins' writings, aiming to identify similar offenders before they strike. And somewhere in an evidence vault, a trove of brass keys sits in solemn testament to lives cut short, each key opening nothing, yet unlocking a harrowing truth about the darkness that sometimes hides behind unremarkable exteriors. Story 24. The old envelope with its edges tinged yellow bore a fresh stamp, as if it had traveled through time to reach its destination just days ago. The detective, with a sense of curiosity mingled with apprehension, carefully unfolded its contents. Inside lay a solitary sheet of paper bearing a message typed in haste, the characters uneven and hurried. "I am sorry for what I did," the words whispered from the page, carrying a weight of regret that seemed to linger in the air. The paper itself exuded a faint dampness, a metallic scent clinging to it like a shroud. And there, along the bottom edge, a reddish smear glistened ominously, a silent witness to a dark truth. Detective Sarah Morgan, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision, secured the letter in an evidence bag, mindful of the significance it held. The forensics team's findings only confirmed her suspicions the crimson stain was human blood, its DNA a haunting echo from an unsolved homicide that had plagued their department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing the brutal marks of a violent end. Her missing laptop, scattered notes, all hinted at a connection between her work and the tragedy that befell her. Despite tireless efforts and countless dead ends, the case had remained a puzzle until this cryptic letter arrived, addressed simply to the Homicide Division. Sparse fingerprints on the paper and envelope hinted at a careful sender, one who had left only faint traces behind. The postmark, a solitary clue in a sea of uncertainty, beckoned the team to unravel its secrets. As Detective Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, shadows cast by crime scene photos danced across the walls, a silent chorus of unsolved mysteries. Pinning the letter's image at the heart of their investigation board, she declared, "This changes everything. Our perpetrator shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this relentless pursuit of justice, offered a different perspective. "Or perhaps it's a facade, a cruel game of deception," he mused, his eyes locked on the enigmatic message before them. The unique typewriter impressions, a relic from a bygone era, led the team on a trail of antiquity, searching for a machine long forgotten yet still lingering in the shadows. As they delved deeper into Rebecca's life, her dedication to uncovering truths, her fearless pursuit of justice, painted a portrait of a woman unafraid to challenge the powerful. Her unfinished investigation into a wealthy family's dark secrets hinted at a motive buried deep within the folds of privilege and deceit. Interviews with her loved ones revealed whispered fears, hidden truths, and a trail of breadcrumbs leading to a chilling revelation. With each passing moment, the web of lies unraveled, exposing hidden alliances and betrayals lurking in the shadows. And then, as if the darkness itself sought to confess, a second letter arrived, bearing the same macabre signature, a typewriter's whispered secrets, a crimson stain of guilt. She knew too much, the words echoed, a chilling confession of sins long buried. The trail led to the opulent mansion of the deceased patriarch, where shadows danced in the flickering candlelight, whispers of the past echoing through its hallowed halls. The eldest son, Richard, his demeanor polished, his words rehearsed, became the focal point of their inquiry. His collection of vintage typewriters, a silent witness to his hidden desires, spoke volumes in the language of evidence. The revelation of a hidden room, a treasure trove of incriminating clues, sealed his fate in the eyes of justice. And yet the true architect of deceit remained concealed, a puppet master pulling the strings from the shadows. Alina, the youngest daughter, with her quiet demeanor and watchful eyes, held the key to unlocking the final truth. Her betrayal of trust, her complicity in a deadly game, shattered the illusion of innocence. The courtroom, a stage set for the final act of justice, bore witness to the unraveling of a carefully woven tapestry of lies. The recording, a damning echo of whispered conspiracies, laid bare the sinister truth lurking beneath the surface. Richard's protestations of innocence crumbled like dust in the wind, his facade of composure shattered by the weight of damning evidence. As the gavel fell, sealing his fate, a sense of closure washed over the courtroom, a bittersweet reminder of lives forever altered by the cruel hand of fate. And as Detective Morgan stood before Rebecca's grieving parents, her gaze filled with unspoken sorrow, she knew that justice, though delayed, had finally found its mark. The blood-stained letters, silent witnesses to a tragedy long past, remained a testament to the enduring power of truth and the inexorable march of justice. In the stillness of the night, as shadows danced on the walls and the echoes of the past whispered in the darkness, the case of Rebecca Warren stood as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, the light of justice will always find a way to pierce the veil of darkness. Story 25, the mysterious package arrived without a return label or tracking number, just a damp cardboard box that beckoned curiosity. Sarah Miller found herself holding it, the name on it unfamiliar, the contents unknown. Despite the oddity, she couldn't resist the pull to uncover its secrets. Inside, instead of the expected items, she discovered a VHS tape with a cryptic note, "Watch alone." The weight of the tape felt ominous, as if harboring forbidden knowledge. With a mix of apprehension and intrigue, Sarah inserted the tape into her old VCR. Static flickered before revealing a dimly lit room where a man, Daniel Whitaker, confessed to a crime he claimed he didn't commit. His story unfolded in a series of tapes sent to various recipients, each revealing a different piece of a complex puzzle. Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entangled in the mystery surrounding Whitaker and the murder of Catherine Walsh. As she delved deeper, she uncovered a web of deceit involving a powerful pharmaceutical company, PharmaCorp, and a whistleblower case that pointed to a sinister cover-up. The evidence against Whitaker seemed too perfect, too neatly arranged to be true. The more Ramirez dug, the more she realized that the truth was far from what it seemed. Sarah received a second package filled with incriminating documents that exposed the dark secrets of PharmaCorp and confirmed Catherine's suspicions. With the help of Ramirez and other recipients of the tapes, they followed Whitaker's trail of breadcrumbs, leading them to a storage unit that held the key to unraveling the conspiracy. Inside, they found irrefutable evidence of framing and corruption at the highest levels. Justice was served not through a swift arrest, but through the meticulous gathering of evidence that exposed the truth. The perpetrators were held accountable, the drug halted, and Daniel Whitaker exonerated from false accusations. As Sarah handed him his tape back, a question lingered in the air: why her address? Why involve strangers in his quest for justice? The answer lay in the randomness of fate, in the algorithm that chose those untainted by the lies spun by those in power. In the end, Sarah and Whitaker stood on her porch, two individuals linked by chance and circumstance, reflecting on the thin line between truth and deception. The VHS tapes, once mysterious artifacts, now served as tangible reminders that sometimes the path to justice is paved with unexpected deliveries, waiting for someone brave enough to unravel the hidden truths within. Story 26, the mysterious box lay hidden beneath layers of forgotten possessions in the attic, a relic of the past left behind by the previous inhabitants of the house. Among the faded Polaroids of ordinary family moments, one photograph stood out, shrouded in an eerie sense of unease. In that snapshot, captured in her very own living room, a family unknown to Rebecca sat blissfully unaware of the lurking figure in the shadows behind them, a man watching from the hallway with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. As Rebecca descended the creaking stairs, the weight of the photograph in her hand seemed to magnify the oppressive emptiness of the house she now called her own. Placing the unsettling image on her kitchen counter, the harsh light revealed the uncanny resemblance between her home and the unfamiliar family frozen in time on the Polaroid. Detective Morgan, a weathered investigator with a keen eye for detail, delved into the mystery surrounding the photograph. Unraveling the history of the house's past occupants, he uncovered a chilling pattern of families disappearing without a trace after precisely 1 year of residency. The enigmatic figure in the hallway remained a haunting enigma, his presence a silent sentinel of unknown intentions. Through diligent investigation, a name emerged: the Sutherlands, the vanished family captured in the photograph. Their sudden disappearance mirrored the fate of those who had inhabited the house before them, a lineage of inexplicable departures spanning years. Forensic analysis revealed the staged nature of the photograph, hinting at a deliberate orchestration that defied reason. The house's dark past intertwined with a long-lost architect, Samuel Whitfield, whose spectral presence seemed to linger within its walls. As the investigation led to a grim discovery beneath the basement floor, the truth emerged in the form of preserved remains of the missing families, each frozen in time like ghosts of the past. Rebecca, now a reluctant protagonist in a macabre tale, found herself ensnared in a web of secrets as the hidden crawlspace in the attic unveiled a sinister lair of voyeuristic observation. The journal within spoke of a chilling prophecy, foretelling her own accelerated fate at the hands of an unseen watcher. Seeking refuge in a hotel under the watchful eye of law enforcement, Rebecca's world was plunged into darkness once more when a mysterious call in the dead of night heralded the ominous click of a Polaroid camera, a harbinger of imminent danger lurking just beyond the shadows. The investigation into the house's grim history continues, its walls whispering secrets that refuse to be fully unveiled. The enigmatic figure of Samuel Whitfield remains an enigma, his true identity lost to time or perhaps hidden in plain sight, waiting to resurface in a new guise, in a new abode, with new victims drawn into the chilling cycle of surveillance and disappearance. As the final click of the camera echoed through the night, the certainty remained that those who dared to uncover the truth about the man in the photograph were now unwittingly ensnared in a dark game of cat and mouse, where the watchers in the shadows held all the cards, their presence lingering like a haunting specter in the stillness of the night. Story 27, the gentle current whispered its lullaby that morning, the water mirroring the sky's calm embrace. The fisherman's gaze drifted lazily, almost missing the odd sight of a suitcase floating near the shore. At first glance, it seemed like a discarded heap of old garments. Yet as he ventured closer, a pungent odor enveloped him, thick, clinging, impossible to ignore. The case was ensnared in chains, its once sharp edges now softened by rust. When the authorities pried it open, no mere clothes greeted them. Instead, they found a tangle of hair, fingers frozen in a haunting grip, and at the case's depths, a cryptic message awaited: "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer shielded her nostrils with a delicate handkerchief as she surveyed the chilling tableau. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, possessed dark locks and a complexion now pallid and marked by the waters. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously documented every detail before the body was solemnly transported away. What struck Mercer amidst the sorrowful scene wasn't just the method of disposal, but the eerie reverence lavished upon the victim's appearance: manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in opulent attire. She wasn't taken here, Mercer mused, her gaze fixed on the gentle caress of the water against the muddy bank. She was readied, presented. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a real estate luminary renowned for her dealings in high-end properties. Divorced, childless, she inhabited a solitary existence in an exclusive neighborhood. Colleagues painted a portrait of a woman driven, precise, and fiercely private. Her absence was first noted by her assistant when she failed to materialize for a crucial showing to affluent clients. Missing that appointment was unthinkable for her, the assistant fervently attested. That sale would have been her crowning achievement. Investigators meticulously combed through Walsh's contemporary abode. Every facet gleamed with flawlessness, almost unnaturally so. Designer furnishings meticulously arranged, not a speck of dust dared mar any surface. The refrigerator harbored meticulously organized meals in identical containers, each day demarcated. Her wardrobe boasted garments arranged by hue, shoes nestled in protective sheaths. An anomaly lingered in her private sanctum, a drawer slightly ajar. Within, a leather-bound journal awaited discovery. The final entry bore witness. He's watching once more. Same vehicle, altered plates. A digital probe unveiled a peculiar trend in Walsh's email: numerous messages from anonymous addresses. Each missive bore the same eerie phrase, "I see your perfection," all dispatched at precise intervals on varied days. Her browsing history revealed numerous inquiries into home security systems and personal safety devices. Mercer drew a connection between these revelations and the intricate display at the crime scene, the meticulous arrangement, the presentation. "Our perpetrator is methodical," she confided to her partner. "This wasn't a crime of passion. This was an orchestrated ritual." A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected quarter. A local pawnbroker recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace, absent from her belongings. The individual who had pawned it was a familiar face: Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker. Surveillance footage chronicled Linden's repeated visits to Walsh's residence over months, sometimes with his maintenance cart, other times without, always during moments of her absence while showcasing properties. Linden's modest apartment yielded a trove of unsettling secrets. The walls adorned with snapshots of Walsh and other women, each bearing a striking resemblance, each captured without consent. Some portraits were marred with red slashes. Walsh was but the third. Concealed behind a false panel in his closet, investigators stumbled upon a shrine. Possessions belonging to each victim meticulously arrayed: a hairbrush with stray strands, tissues stained with lipstick, receipts, keys. A slender notebook accompanied each collection, chronicling daily routines, preferences, habits. A chill descended in the interrogation chamber when Linden was brought forth. Clad in pristine attire and speaking in hushed tones, he exuded an aura of innocence. Yet when confronted with the evidence, his countenance remained unchanged. "They were flawed," he eventually intoned, his voice devoid of inflection. "They projected an illusion of flawlessness, but I saw past it. Catherine's left drawer was always in disarray. She missed a spot while applying her lipstick. Her perfection was a charade." The quest for the two victims alluded to in Linden's note led investigators to remote locales where two additional cases were unearthed. Inside lay women bearing resemblances to Walsh, both real estate agents who touted their meticulous attention to detail. During his trial, Linden sat motionless, his visage a mask as prosecutors delineated his modus operandi. He had shadowed each woman for months, assimilating their routines, infiltrating their homes, absorbing their lives. Upon seizing them, he sought to correct what he perceived as their imperfections, coiffing and styling their hair, applying makeup with precision, garbing them in finery before extinguishing their light. The families of the victims bore witness in silence as the judge decreed a life term without hope of release. For Detective Mercer, the case was officially sealed, yet enigmas lingered. What had catalyzed Linden's fixation on these select women? What inner blemish was he striving to efface through these atrocities? The river maintained its languid journey downstream, its waters eventually purged of all traces. However, within the precinct, upon Mercer's desk, rested duplicates of those disquieting notebooks, a reminder that within the veneer of everyday existence, shadows may lurk beneath the surface. And sometimes, the gravest threats manifest in the guise of the unassuming, watching, waiting for a single imperfection to betray their malevolent intent.